and welcome to episode 293 of The Crate and Crowbar. It's, I forgot the date, 21st of August.
We prepared this time.
I know.
We rehearsed it.
I looked at it, but then it went from my memory because I didn't write it down because it was so easily rememberable. I'm John Francis. With me here today are Alex Wiltshire.
Hello.
And special guest, Mike Cook.
Hello.
Sorry, I set the pitch too high for you.
You're ready to go from here.
That's okay, we can stay up here.
Hello, Mike.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks so much.
Lovely to see you.
Yeah, I've been locked in the attic since the last guest episode, and you finally let me out. It's great.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you what you've been up to, but I guess you've covered that now.
Is this why we had to come to your house, Tom? Because this is where you keep
It's
Mike.
too weak to travel.
No, I'm back in the country because I'm attending a conference in London, the IEEE Conference on Games, or COG, and it's
The COG.
The COG, that's what we call it. It used to be called CIG, and they wanted to keep the acronym as close as possible when they renamed themselves. So now it's just Conference on Games, just nice and like broad. It could be anything.
Oh, it's not about Gears of War.
No. Or well, if you wanted it to be,
Potentially.
there could be some papers in the mix. I haven't seen all of the talks yet.
There is a great weight, I expect, of academic work on Gears of War.
I mean, you'd be surprised. It's funny what games become popular, because like the games that become popular have nothing to do with like the topics or the problems that become popular. So some years you just go in, like there's a Blood Bowl competition this year being run about like writing AI to play Blood Bowl.
Oh, man.
And you don't really hear much about Blood Bowl these days, but it's actually like a great game to build AI for. So I'm super excited for that. So
this is one you talked about Blood Bowl before, Alex, in terms of it's an interesting game design thing where when you have a bunch of actions you want to do the least risky first, because if anything fails, your turn ends, right?
Yeah. If you fail a dice roll, your turn is over.
So that is interesting from an AI perspective.
Absolutely. Like lots of the games that AI play are what we call perfect information games, where there is no ambiguity about what's going to happen next and there's no hidden information. But Blood Bowl is, not like that at all. And there's a lot of risk.
And great big possibility space, mate.
Exactly. But the conference, I'm midway through the conference. I've actually left the conference temporarily to come and be with you today.
He's on a conference holiday. A conference jaunt.
I'm back tomorrow, but there's already been like some really fun stuff and people from industry coming to talk, lots of new researchers with new passions. I was having a chat with a PhD student last night who wants to blend games together. So he told me that he was reading this paper, and at the end of the paper, it posed this question: What would Super Mario plus Contra minus Zelda be?
Wait, you got just minus Zelda? The Zelda wasn't there.
That's negative Zelda.
The impression Zelda would leave after having been there.
And he said he was transfixed by this problem, and he wants to build a system that could answer these questions.
Wow.
And I chatted with him for a long time about that, and that's fascinating because one of the things we were talking about was, if you play, there's lots of games where, we might all play the game, but we like it for different reasons, right? Like Crusader Kings 2 or any Paradox game, I'm just there for the story. I'm so bad at the systems. So it would be interesting to do like, what is, Europa Universalis minus Civilization? What's left if you do those two things? Like maybe that's a game that's like more for me. We chatted for a long time, and
So is the research question with that about trying to set up rules for what defines like a game type? Is that what you would study if you did that thesis? So
one of the problems is if all three of us answered that question of like what is Super Mario plus Contra, just that on its own, we would all come up with three different games. So
especially me, because I don't know what Contra is.
Right, well, you'd be way off. But
Super Mario, but with a Vampire Weekend soundtrack.
Is that not what you hear when you play?
He hasn't played any of the new ones.
Oh, okay, that explains it.
Yeah. So he wanted to attack it from a machine learning perspective, which means that you can kind of ask the computer just like, you tell me what you think Mario is, and you tell me what you think Contra is in this weird like abstract space, and then that allows you to do math on the abstract space without worrying about what the games are. But the problem is like, if you do that with artists, so this is actually what we're talking about. If you do this with like, what is Picasso meets Renoir or something, you ultimately get an image you can look at. Like, it might not be a good image, but you can look at the image. You can hang it on the wall. Mario plus Contra, it's not necessarily going to be playable. There's like lots of things in that space that are not games, and that's like a massive challenge. Like, games have so many requirements that other media don't.
Yeah,
I think I vaguely understand that I can almost relate this to is you can generate, if you take a body of text that's like all of Alex's writing.
Right.
Oh Christ, sorry.
Yeah.
You can make a word cloud that is not the most used words in Alex's writing, but the most Alex words. Like the words that are more common in your text than they are in some other average body of text, which would have to be, a huge volume of just randomly sampled writing or something. And so you can take the word, those would be the most Alex words. And if you wanted to make an anti-Alex text, as I do every week, you could de-emphasize those words and pick sentences that avoid the words that Alex likes to use. So I guess I can extrapolate from that to like Picasso and imagine like a Picasso brushstroke might be one of his distinguishing features, and you might extrapolate that as like, okay, well, the difference between Picasso and most artists, which is an absurd phrase, is this particular kind of brushstroke, and therefore to be anti-Picasso, you must exactly avoid that, and the brushstrokes must be like more narrow or something.
Yeah.
Right. But then like extrapolating that to like fucking an entire game, like
Exactly.
Universalis,
That's what you were saying about
very hard to imagine.
This is all interpretation, but of course there is that with a picture, but the picture can be a picture without someone looking at it, whereas a game isn't a game until there's a person playing it, and then
Absolutely.
then you get this extra layer of kind of interpretation.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
But one of the difficult things about machine learning is that it will come up with its own idea, like its own abstract representation for these things. And that's why it's so powerful, is that we don't have to tell it how to represent Mario in its space, in its neural network or whatever. But at the same time, it also means that we can't always control it in the way we want to, or it does, the things that it identifies as a Picasso-esque thing might be something completely, like it might be the amount of pressure he applied to the canvas, like something that you wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
But that maybe is still, it turns out, good at the end of the day.
Well, so I'd love to Contra to answer. Contra is a very fast-paced run and gunner, so it's platformer, but all about shooting, and it's very, very hard, and it's instant kills. And if that process, I'd be interested personally if at the end of that process you realise that there's something special with Contra's, the speed at which bullets go. Like there's something about that game which chose a particular speed, which has meant that it, among all the many other run and gunners of its era, kind of it stuck around. Plus other things I expect. But yeah, I'd love to see database stuff on that, because it's the start. Like it might get a fingernail under the feel stuff that you can talk about, but not necessarily understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's the subject of like what people see as the essence of a game is something that's of practical value when you're making a game, because you're often pitching it or showing it at conventions and stuff. And it's super interesting to hear how someone else summarizes a game, especially if you can get someone to just play your game and then have them tell someone else about it, try and describe it to them. The features they pick up on are sometimes very surprising and not what you thought was interesting about your game or unique about your game. And they're coming to it from a perspective of, whatever their, I said earlier, like comparing Picasso to most artists and comparing a game to most games. That body of most games, of course, is different for everybody. So even if we had the exact same processing engines that would make the exact same kind of comparisons and care about the same kinds of things, the body of work we're comparing it to is different on a person-to-person basis. And so you as a developer are bad at judging that as well, because you've got a weird set of a body of work that you're familiar with and you're comparing it to that. And so you need to hear how other people see your work and what stands out to them about it.
You can probably sell it. You can probably sell it to big publishers, and then they get some numbers
Yeah,
about how good their game is. It replaced Metacritic with an even more indescribably stupid number.
It's funny because the student whose name is Anurag Sakhar, I believe, and working at Northeastern University, and he was actually saying he was worried that it wouldn't have any impact on the games industry, but actually, something like that probably would have massive impact.
Yeah,
would have unending impact.
All publishers want is like a number saying this is how much we should back this game.
I would definitely worry more about how incredibly hard it will be to do
of course,
than about its viability.
That's like exactly. That's a luxury problem, a luxury worry for the future. Yeah, for most of us. But no, it's been a really great conference, as it always is. It's great to see like new ideas emerging, new trends, thinking about like what will we be worrying about in 5 years' time. It's always great to see all these people come together and share what they've been doing. Obviously, no other big gathering of people about games has been happening this week, so it was really easy to get industry people to turn up, obviously, because they had nothing else to do. No, it's been good fun.
It reminds me a bit of. So you are perhaps best known for Angelina, which is a game-making AI, an AI that can sort of generate game ideas and design games. But I know that you're interested in more than just that, and in particular, it seems often when I talk to you about Angelina, that you're interested in the questions that come up in making that almost as much as you are in actually having a thing where you can just press a button and get a game.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that you've talked about before is like, how do you get Angelina to judge a game? And how does that compare to how a human judges a game? And if Angelina makes a game that isn't good by human standards, like what is it that the human is bringing to that and understanding that, which is, it seems quite similar to the idea of like getting an AI to sort of figure out what is unique about a game and be able to plus and minus that to things.
It's also really hard to quantify. Like I've been thinking a lot lately, when Angelina comes up with a game which is almost good but not quite, or good in a way that humans find unintuitive, it's really hard to answer this question of like, if a human designed this thing, would we actually feel the same way about it? So Miege Kure, is that how you pronounce it? Like,
well, I don't know. That's how I've been pronouncing it.
Like, that is a really complicated game. Like, it's really complicated to explain to other people. If an AI came up with it, we would say, this AI just views the world differently. It's obviously a wild idea for a game, but the human has come up with it. It's just that he's trying to change the kinds of games that we play. So it's really hard to draw that kind of distinction, I think.
Yeah, I go into that. I mean, it hinges a lot on, does the AI pitch it as, here's a game about a 4-dimensional puzzle garden?
Right.
Because if you say 4-dimensional, then I'm looking for that. Okay, how does this? Because I don't know what that is. But I know it's going to be weird, and I know that the 3 dimensions I can see will change, and then I'm hooking all that up to that. But that requires a kind of intentionality that's very human, and the human knows, oh, no one's done this, I'm going to do this, stuff like that.
And you've also hit on this thing which we call explainable AI, which is becoming increasingly a topic that you're either interested in or you think is anathema in the AI community. But the idea that AI should be able to explain themselves. So, for instance, the European Union made lots of rumblings about this recently, where they sort of wanted to make it law in the future that we can request an explanation for any algorithmic decision. Like,
this seems so like sort of weak as a defense against AI. When they conquer us, we'll at least have the right to say, "Look, can you just explain this? Yeah. Come on. Seriously.
Why did you?
We can't stop
Bolton?
you, but could you just give an account of your actions, please?
Dissolve me in acid, fine, but at least tell me why." So, I mean, for some people, this actually comes back to like, even something like the Steam recommender. Some people just want a recommendation and then they want to play that game. But in many cases, or for many people, it's important to explain why. And I think when you talk about, and especially when you're selling games, like, why did you make this game? Angelina does not have an answer to that right now. And it would be great to say, well, because I was playing Alan Hazelden's latest puzzle game, and I wondered what would happen if you changed the rules to be like this, which is often like, it's something I hear you say, Tom, sometimes. You played a game and you thought, what would happen if blah, 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 blah.
And I say that because people are way more forgiving of your weird broken thing if they know why you made it, which definitely could help an AI.
Absolutely,
that's a really interesting point, because like the stories around games are as, can be as important as the game itself. I think, like you can get very, very slight feeling games that feel really weighty because you understand about the person who made it or the ideas that they were meant to mean.
And like my PhD thesis was officially on evolutionary computation.
I was going to ask you about what you've done talking about. Evolutionary
computation.
Okay.
Just like a particular kind of computational algorithm that's inspired by the theory of evolution. But in reality, half my thesis was talking about like the social impact of AI and why it pays to have an AI engage with people for exactly the reason you've said, because stories matter to people and explanations matter. And Angelina has been designed to be a more honest system. Like not in the sense that the system is honest, but I have designed it more honestly. It shows mistakes and it explains what it does, and its games aren't very good. And yet, despite all of these things, a lot of people, like a little community's grown up around it because people relate to the system and its trajectory, its growth, and its ability. Like, even though it's making bad games, they feel like they have a better connection to it, I think, than if it was just press button, get game.
I think it's important that it's called Angelina. Like, right from that moment, you kind of created a character that people
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's meaning in the fact that it's a female name as well.
Well, funny you should ask.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not a criticism, you know. It's,
No.
But it's clearly like part of it, you know.
Yeah, that's been a really difficult that's been a really difficult part of the project over the years, because when I was starting my PhD, this was just like a project. I didn't know anyone would care about it. Slapped a name on it, moved on. It was an acronym that, you know, like suited it at the time. And now, of course, it has all this weight. Like all of the most trivial. Please don't ask me, Tom.
Damn it. On behalf of our listeners, I think I should ask you what the acronym is.
Please, I just okay.
They're going to be trying it in their head.
I know.
Shall I try and guess? And then
Please, you will never guess in a million years.
A new game engine. Let's invent. No. I've got nowhere to go from it. Anything. Let's invent no anything.
It's almost as good as what I had. I just wanted a recursive acronym, so it's which is like, so it was just shoehorned in, because again, I just want to stress, I didn't think anyone would care about anything I did ever. So the acronym is a novel game evolving lab rat I've named Angelina. So it definitely helped people attach to the project. And over time, I've realized that, you know, anthropomorphizing these systems is risky.
Yeah.
And it's risky because it raises people's expectations. And then when you can't meet them, they actually feel negatively towards it. And so that's one of the reasons why I've tried to move away from anthropomorphism, but the name has remained. And since then, you know, I've had it explained to me, for instance, that there is a long history of male AI researchers naming their systems after women, things like this, like things that I just didn't think about back in 2010. And so the name will probably be being retired at some point, like in the future. Like on this project I'm on right now, that's like one of the things I want to do is the system, like maybe the version on my laptop, people will still refer to as Angelina, but the system as a whole, like you might have your own system and it will have its own name. Maybe you'll pick a name for it, or maybe it will just be some generic collection of words. But I want to take that leap into not having a name and still seeing if I can make you care about it, like still seeing if I can make you relate to it.
And I think that's
a
worthy experiment.
Right.
The whole process is actually really instructive.
And it ties into your thing about being developing it in an honest way as well. Like the sort of giving it a human name is as if we're trying to suggest it was a human intelligence that made it. And of course you're not trying to suggest that. So,
and it creates awkwardness either way, right? Because I don't know what you would call it otherwise. You could call it like, my supervisor's system was called the Painting Fool. It was an artist. Some people call things with like aspirational names. Someone named a system after a Greek god because it had like two halves, and it was called Gemini.
Okay.
Gemini's a really cool automated game design system. But it feels like, you know, any kind of name has drawbacks. So I was speaking to Holly Nielsen, who's a historian of games, and she suggested that you just let people name it. Like, if you have a version that sits at the Crate and Crowbar and makes games on the Discord for people, then let the Discord name the system. You know, they'll come up with their own name, because
Gamey McDesigner fate.
Thousands of those.
No, it was a mistake. I bought.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I have absolutely no doubt. Yeah.
There was something you said earlier about how a game by an AI might be perceived differently to one if the same game was made by a human, and in that case, perhaps less charitably in the case of Megakure. I also think there's an effect in the other direction for some things, where if you know an algorithm generated it, it's good when it would be bad if a human generated it. And I'm thinking specifically of heat signatures names. It's just two big lists, and the ones that delight people when it comes up with, it will just be things like Magic Glass or just something like that. And if I name a character Magic Glass, everyone's like, why the fuck did you name it that? But when you know it was truly random and it's serendipity that these two things came together, and it reads as if someone just read as like, you know, a claim about something, and that would be awful if a human came out with it, because it's like, why are you trying to say that? Why? Like, it's just really transparent. I mean, I'm suddenly thinking of Hideo Kojima and some people like that, but
I think that's a great point. I think that's actually one of the great things that generative systems can do. And I think one of the things that people misunderstood maybe about No Man's Sky initially when it came out, for instance, was that if you have a universe that is endlessly full of perfectly beautiful things, then beauty means something different. Yeah. And the great thing about No Man's Sky was that it had these barren planets, for instance, or, you know, some of the planets were less interesting than others because that texture makes the good ones significant, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, generative systems can have all kinds of different aesthetics. But it's funny you mentioned we actually did a test to see if people would perceive a game differently if Angelina designed it. This is going back a few years now, but the system entered into Ludum Dare, and it was just a game jam where people make a game in like a weekend. It happens 3 times a year. And the system entered one game where we talked about it and we explained what Angelina was in the description, and then another game with a fake account, no explanation. And people gave nicer reviews to the one where we explained it was an AI, because people were like invested in the system. They kind of wanted to be charitable, I think. They rated it very high on innovation because they were really reviewing Angelina as a concept. Like, all of these interesting like factors come into play. And you do see like this massive positivity towards the system. Like it has a Twitter account and people miss it when it doesn't tweet. Like I've had people ask like where it's gone. You know, it's fascinating to see these social reactions to AI systems. That's why, you know, when I see like big corporate scale AI, like it can be a bit depressing sometimes because they kind of, it feels like they want to shave that off sometimes and like get rid of that personal connection that people have. But people like connecting to their technology on a personal level.
Do you think like in level generation and level design, it's a cliche that if you come across like a room full of weapons and pickups and stuff, you know a boss is coming, right? Or it's a really, really difficult challenge. We read intent into level design. If we know a human designed it, then when we get rewards, we wonder why. And right now with procedural generation, you don't want that. Like if Diablo drops 2 rare items in a row, you don't think, oh, what terrible thing is coming? Because you read no intent into it. You know it's random. Do you think we'll get to that point with proc gen levels, or is it going to be like where we trust the proc gen thing so implicitly, or we know it's this sophisticated that when it does one thing to us, we expect something to happen next just because we think, well, a good level designer would do this and this is a good level designer?
I think the first thing that's likely to happen is not that we think a good level designer would do this, but people will start to read algorithms.
Yeah, you can probably see the rules because I'm thinking about unexplored and the way it's generated.
Exactly,
so if you find a key, then you know there's a door, and which is actually the same for Brogue and other things, you know. But like there will always be each level is so self-contained, and with an answer to every question in it that you kind of like you can read them, which is actually a strength in that game, because you need to be able to read a roguelike like that.
One of the interesting things about Unexplored was that it kind of made a big deal in its marketing about its cyclical dungeon generation.
Yeah.
And what that meant was, after a while, I started realizing if I ended up in a room that seemed like a dead end, I knew that there was almost no way it was. So I would like keep, poking the walls and looking for like a way out. So in a way, it like gave you this secret bit of information. But like you said, it didn't ruin the game or anything. It just like made you look at the level a different way, which I think is very cool.
That's interesting. I kind of sort of, this might be a bit of an oblique connection, but I interviewed Avi. Is it Avi Takari, who the maker of Barbari's You?
Oh yeah.
And he was telling me about how the game came about. It was initially a game jam game, and when he was making the game jam version of the game, he saw it as a turn-based block puzzler inspired by kind of Soccer Band likes. But he was wondering, like, should I've come up with this word system in there? Should this be a puzzle game? Or should it be a sandbox? Because he was experiencing, as he was making it, people watching his screen and going, "Oh my God, you can put all the words together and then all the rules of the level change." And so he was thinking, well, maybe I should really play up to that and give people stuff to play with. So he came up with a bunch of words which have no function, but they just changed the aesthetics. Like I think one of them was wonder, and another one was best. And if you put best on something like Baba is best, you just get twinkles coming out. But then he realised that as the game became more and more puzzle-based, he realised he couldn't have them in there because people would have automatically assumed that best was part of the solution. And there's like a whole swathe of games that become impossible if not everything is functional, and that seems a rule which AIs probably get into quite a lot.
I wonder, because I remember like Steven's Sausage Roll, I could only complete levels in that by working on the assumption that if there were like a rectangular island and there's one little block that sticks out into the sea, I have to go on that block. So that block will be used. There's a reason it's there. Yeah. And so that's kind of a hard and fast rule. It feels like, everything is there for a reason. But then it's not trivial to translate that to how an AI would do it, because an AI doesn't necessarily have the same concept of like, what is not putting that block there? Like, why is just the rectangle more logical? Like, if there's just a rectangle, I don't assume every space on the rectangle is needed. There could be blank spaces there that don't do anything. But when you have one block sticking out, I see that, oh, that's an anomaly. That's weird. Why is that there? And in that particular case, it would be easy to define a rule that would cover that. But there's all kinds of things where, like, to a human, the simplest thing is not what necessarily an AI is going to see it as, unless you really have a sophisticated way of detecting that.
And then that depends on who's making the game, right? Because Stephen Lavell's game design is extremely precise and focused.
Yeah.
Something like Hyperlight Drifter had this aesthetic that was a little bit messy. There were things that were like poking out of the world. And so it comes back to what you were saying of like, you know, AI struggle to understand things that don't necessarily have a function, or some AI do. Angelina is definitely one of them. And I have actually, one of the things I'm working on right now is once you've finished designing a level, you go back and you start trying to reduce it. So it is actually kind of the thing you were talking about, where you remove something and you see, like, does this level still make sense? And you start to shave bits off. But of course, the problem with any instruction you give to an AI is that they take it too far, you know? So the thing with that is that you will end up with a level where there's literally only things which are required to solve it in the level, like nothing else, like no like open space or ambiguity or anything, you know? If you just
a
let
corridor
it run
to a key and then a door.
Exactly, yeah. And so, you know, it's so difficult because a lot of it just comes down to, in real life, it would be, what is the taste of the designer, and which designers do I like resonate with, and things like that. And for AI, we haven't reached that point of thinking about the systems in that way yet. And that's partly just a question of time, I think, you know, more people working in that area. But it is also just a hard problem. And that's why I like the social aspect of it, because, you know, I think if there were 500 Angelinas in the world, which is what I'm hoping in the near future, then we can start asking questions like, what makes this one unique? And one of those things might be, what is their tolerance for unnecessary items in a puzzle game? You know, it would be like a minor thing, but that might be something that distinguishes one of them from another one.
Yeah.
You're saying it's hard to get Angelina to understand why walls are good?
Oh my god. Just like walls are so good. Like, walls are the best. And then you try and describe why walls are good to someone and they look at you like, you know, you're like you're looking at me right now. So the thing is that walls are conceptual, right? That's the problem. This section out of context is going to sound, even for this podcast, it's going to sound weird. So the problem is, like, walls. This is something we've been looking at lately. Is that actually we kind of were talking about earlier about paintings are things on a canvas that you look at, right? But games have these two layers. They have what happens in code and what happens on the screen, and then the player sees what happens on the screen, and the designer sees what happens in the code, and walls are things that don't do anything. That is their defining feature, is that they do nothing and they don't allow anything to happen to them. And what that means is, if you tell Angelina, like, well, one of the problems we had early on was that it was just throwing stuff into the rule set, and if it wasn't necessary, it wouldn't affect the rules in a bad way. So you would just have like blocks of cheese in every level that didn't do anything because they had no reason to remove them. Right. So then I said, well, if there's something in here that isn't used, just get rid of it. But walls don't do anything. I can't explain to it, like, walls allow you to design better games. Yeah. Like, you can't tell it that. So it starts doing weird things like using enemies instead of walls, and the enemies move. And to Angelina, this is not more complicated, really. It doesn't have a notion of like perceptual complexity. But to a human, this is so, like, I can't, the space is not being constrained in any way. There's things running around, and it reminds me of like old ZX Spectrum games where it was just like a screen of enemies and power-ups, and you just had to like run around it and hope you survived. And of course, you know, there will be ways around it, but it's very frustrating.
I wonder if you almost want to like have layers of generation, because I feel like a level that we recognize as like a decent level in a side-on puzzle platformer type thing starts by being an incredibly boring space in which nothing interesting can happen. And then you add a goal, and then you add a player, and then you add something preventing them from getting to the goal, and then you add some mechanic that lets them get over it. But all of that, it's kind of true that most of those walls don't have any point. Like, you know, gunpoint, all the buildings are just rectangles stacked on top of each other. Most of those walls don't need to be there.
Yeah.
But I want to make something that looks like a building, because once you have that as framework and context, then everything else has meaning within that. And so even games that aren't really trying to realistically depict anything, I think they have those walls just to sort of show, here's a space that you might be able to relate to. Here's something that looks a bit like a building, or a bit like a maze, or a bit like just something that we're accustomed to being in. And then from there, let's build a game on top of that.
Yeah, the idea. So there's so many different ways you can attack it, right? And I think a lot of it comes down to the kind of designer that you are as well. And like all of us are a certain type of game designer, even if we've never made a game before. In our conversations with friends or like this podcast, we express little things, ways that we think of problems and things like that. And I think one thing that I want to do is not worry about like, is the layered version like the best way to do it, or is it a good way to do it? But to build systems that are able to come up with these arbitrary ways of representing problems or these arbitrary ways of attacking problems. So yeah, like this version of Angelina always puts, it adds in elements one by one. Or maybe this version of the system starts with a solution and then adds things around it that complicates it. I think like that's like this kind of meta level of how do you do game design, which is something that we haven't looked at much yet. And I think some of these problems are scary because there's no right answer. And actually, the field I work in is officially called computational creativity. And we're basically defined as the people who solve problems that don't have optimal solutions. Like there is no one answer. There's no like one painting. And they're always the scariest problems, but they're always like the most fun to attack because, every approach, like that idea of like building up a level in bits and pieces, like, yeah, that would totally work. I could imagine an AI system that did it. And it wouldn't be it's not like I've discovered a law about the universe. It's not the answer to everything. It just happens to be one way of solving this problem. And once you implement it, you'll find out all the things wrong with it, all the things it does better than the others. And I don't know, that's why things like this conference are so fun, because you see all of the ways people have like inched forward their little area over the last 12 months. And it's things like that. It's like, what if we did it this way? And it doesn't solve anyone's problems forever. I haven't cured cancer or anything like that. But we're all thinking about the problem slightly differently now. Yeah, that's why it's fun.
Thinking about it, I always end up with, by the end of making a game, I do have kind of a formula for how you make a level for that game. Like obviously Heatsig, I tried to write a formula. Here, computer is how you make a Heatsig level. For Gunpoint, it was much more of like a messing around and going too far in a puzzly direction at first, where there was only one solution to every level and people just felt like they had to do it. And then to fix that, went too open-ended and everyone would just find a solution because there were so many that worked, and they would just think this is super easy because the first thing that occurred to me worked. And then ended up, the formula for a Gunpoint level ended up being the outside, starting from outside a building, getting into it is open-ended, and there are 4 or 5 different solutions, all kinds of ways of doing it. Just set up a few very weak obstacles, lots of freedom. And then the closer you get to the objective, the more we constrain you. And then usually the last door before the objective, there's only one way to solve it. And that's the part where we're trying to teach you something new. And like, unless you understand how to do X, you won't get in there. But because you had that kind of open-endedness before, you're kind of... you're okay with it. It doesn't feel like the whole level was all one. Was just Simon Says. It's kind of you've had your fun. Now solve the fucking puzzle.
That's fascinating though. Like that kind of thing. I really love when someone. So one of the ways Angelina designs levels right now is actually inspired by something Alan Hazelden told me about how he designs puzzle levels. And so I kind of encoded that and saw if that was like a good way to start. But that's amazing. That's like. No one's going to make levels for Gunpoint again, probably, right? But that's like this whole process.
Well, it has actually a level editor and a Steam Workshop, actually, so I hope the community will continue their vibrant work.
They might be making levels right now, as we say this. But then even they wouldn't have your formula.
Yeah, that's true.
So, that's like a fascinating piece of design knowledge that you developed over years. It'd be amazing to capture that somewhere. Like, maybe I should write that down and, archive them.
Right at the moment, you fully understand how to make a level for your game. You finish the game and it. Use it anyway.
That kind of comes of most writing a feature. You struggle with the first sort of bit. Like even if it's not the first few sentences, that will end up being the first sentence in the thing. It is the getting and finding the voice, and then it's only at the end you're able to sort of steam ahead and kind of. You have to set up the rules for yourself for the thing you're making, which you don't know what it is. So you can't make rules for it at the start, and then it kind of makes itself known.
Do you find yourself having to go back to the beginning because you understand the whole thing differently now and then redrafting?
You kind of usually the start because you suddenly realise, I've answered the question that I didn't actually pose at the start. I thought it was about something else back then. So yeah.
That's the ultimate writer hack, isn't it? Like, how do you get the end to loop neatly back to the beginning? Well, when you've written the end, think about what would loop neatly back to.
Well, yeah, the class, yeah.
that's one of the things humans are amazing at that AI are generally quite bad at, right? So there's every chance that when Angelina has been trying to reinvent Soccer Band because I'm trying to convince it that walls exist, it might have come across a game that is so beautiful it would make the three of us cry just to describe it right now. And it's like, well, this isn't what I'm looking for. In the trash can.
That's it. It's throwing probably masterpieces away.
It could be. Probably not, admittedly, but it could be. And humans have this like amazing brain that notices, it sparks off other things serendipitously, and AI are not so good at that yet. So that's what makes me feel good, is the idea that I'm sure Angelina has made IGF award-winning games. It's just that it needs to recognize them. It's a very philosophical way of thinking about it. It makes them every day, probably. I just need to teach it what to look for.
It's talking of games that may or may not be good. Yeah. We've got Gamescom coming on, the other event.
It's got like, everyone was talking about like watching Gamescom, and I'm like, what is that?
What do you watch?
I've never done that before. But Jeff Keighley made it a watchable thing.
Oh, he was
Opening Night Live, it's called, and it's an event, don't you know?
Now it is.
Giving it the Jeff.
I actually appreciate it, because like, if the hard thing is keeping up with what the hell is going on, and if there's just one thing I can watch that's like 2 hours long, I didn't watch all of it. I watched after the fact and skipped through the bits that are boring. But just like condense it and show me some things that you say are a big deal, and I'll pay some attention to them. Whereas usually Gamescom kind of passes me by, and if there's a trailer that's of something that that I was already excited about, or from a developer I already like, then I check that out. But other than that, it's not an event the way E3 is. E3 is like,
well, the pattern was you announce the game at E3 and you show a bit more of it. At
and then
Gamescom.
Cyberpunk actually, it hasn't happened yet, but their pattern has been to show press a behind closed doors demo of Cyberpunk at E3, and then at Gamescom show a video of that entire thing. That's what they did last year, and they're planning to do it this year. I'm pretty sure I heard that the stuff people were talking about at E3 will come out as a video during Gamescom this year.
Oh, wow.
But it's interesting, because last year it was like the buzz from press seeing it behind closed doors was extraordinary, and you're imagining, what the hell is this game? And then they released the video, and it was really cool. And but this year the buzz from press seeing it behind closed doors has been mixed at best. I would say there's a lot of, the word that I keep hearing is mortal, like, oh, it's a game, it's just a game like other games,
right?
It has all the problems that you expect from a video game of this kind. But yeah, the year before, the demo was kind of, had that kind of, it's an awful phrase to use, but like next gen-y feel, like, oh, this is actually like everything in this is kind of a level beyond what would come to. Even the UI was like, wow, that's really nice UI. And apparently that's sort of at E3 for a lot of journalists, that what they saw was a bit of a step down from that. So maybe they won't release the video, but I expect they probably will, because people are so excited about that thing that they'll get a positive reception.
You got to feed the pump.
Yeah. What did we see from Gamescom? Kerbal Space Program 2 was announced.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
What more can you do, though? It's all space.
Well, I'll tell you what. You can go to other stars.
Other space.
Because it has interstellar travel, apparently.
That's cool. That is good. So you presumably got to plan going... Oh, my God. This means that fundamentally you've got to have like a time system in it, which can zip forward like years of time.
Does that mean, like, you need to plan like ships that can sustain life over?
I guess so. Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. You're all looking at me.
Yeah, Tom.
I didn't watch this trailer.
We've just become interested in this simply by thinking through the premise. Because that means it's probably going to be a successful game.
Kerbal is a very like strangely realism focused thing. Like I remember the classic kind of characterization of Kerbal is from Randall Munro, who does XKCD, who used to work at NASA and did a graph of like knowledge of orbital dynamics over time, and it starts sort of very low, bumps up a bit when it goes to NASA, and then skyrockets when it starts playing Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah. I think, I've got very, very tired of all this moon landing stuff over the last a few weeks ago.
Land mooning is pointless. The land doesn't care that you're showing its ass.
Let's get the moon on the land. But I did appreciate what I did see in terms of explaining the process of going there and why, it's quite complicated. And yeah, like we
go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard.
But it's I don't know. Yes, that's good.
Okay, there's the verdict. I don't know. Yes, it's
I
good.
ran out of steam there, didn't I?
I saw some rumblings that they're changing the modding system as well. So I think that was like a big thing about the previous one. So
Right. It's just going to be another thing that will be different about this, which is like a lot of the team have left because they had a big. There was, I don't know the details, but there was some kind of big falling out between various parties involved in it, and I know of 2 different development teams that are formed entirely of Kerbal Space Program programmers who are not the people making Kerbal Space Program 2.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's left, but it's a different team for sure.
Huh. It'll be fine. Might be fine. Might not be fine.
Quentin Crowell's verdict. I don't know. Yes, it's good, and it'll be fine.
I thought that your first game that you'd want to talk to was that cyberpunky kind of stabby game.
Ghost Runner. Pitched as, well, I don't know if they pitched it this way, but it's reported as sort of cyberpunk Mirror's Edge meets Dishonored, which is like, wow, okay, I'm interested.
I'm pretty sure they actually took the exact falling down and stabbing somebody.
It's got that feel, and it's also got the Dishonored logic of like, as long as you drop kill somebody, any fall is fine for you.
It's just uniquely spongy.
The high you're falling from, it just makes it even more lethal for them. You're fine. No going back there.
You transfer all the lethality into the body of what you land on.
Yeah.
That is simple physics.
Simple lethality dynamics. First law of lethality dynamics is the player takes no damage.
It looks very Mirror's Edge.
Yeah. And that on paper it sounds a lot more exciting than the video was to me. The drop kill, I'm right there for that. If I'm assassinating people and figuring out how to get like up really high to do cool drop kills, absolutely cool. But then a lot of the video is sort of like, here are 2 really conspicuous wall running walls, jump between them in this prescribed way to get to where you're going. I hope that if that's like, if there's a big open-ended level and that's one of the things I can do to get to the top of a tower to do that cool drop kill, then great. But if that's just, I have to get from A to B and this is the way you get from A to B, that's a bit less interesting.
I don't normally feel charitable towards trailers like this, but there was something about it where I felt like I feel like this isn't actually the parts of the game you meant to show us. Like there was something about it where the presentation of it felt like I don't think that is all it is. Like I think there are sections that are less, like you say, kind of artificially set up, but certainly like some of the bits they showed felt a bit like that Mirror's Edge DLC where there were just big geometric shapes floating in space for no reason. A little bit like that.
That was really like abstractly beautiful, though.
It was,
and this looks fine.
It
but
didn't
it's not.
have the Mirror's Edge story stuff, so it was probably
that was a plus.
But good swords though.
Mirror's Edge. That's my verdict. Mirror's Edge. Just wistfully saying it.
Mirror's Edge out of 10. Okay.
I remember recently I was listening to a podcast. I think maybe the Kotaku podcast where. One of the questions I had was like, have you ever broken a controller? Yep, Mirror's Edge. One of my favourite games of all time. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Threw it against the wall. It was an intensely frustrating game at times. Frustration is a multiple of confidence and catastrophe. It's like, how sure was I knew how to do this, and how badly wrong did it go? Those 2 multiplied together, not added, multiplied. So and I played that game a lot, and I was like, I did reasonably well at it in general, but just sometimes the fucking grabbing just wouldn't happen, and it was always life or death, and it was just.
But here you have nice, like, big, meaty targets to lock onto that you'll instantly slap onto.
I'm actually very curious about how drop kills work, because Dishonored, it's easy to forget when you like watch all the sort of super stealth kill montages of people doing incredible things. It's actually like jumping off. I mean, like there's a really tall bridge in, I think it's Dishonored 1, where it's possible to jump from the top of it and land on someone and stealth and drop kill them and therefore survive the fall. It's possible, but you have to really get that jump right. Like you need to time it right, and I don't think you have a lot of air control. And then playing like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, like
sucks you in.
You just press a button to do it, and your character just figures out how to do it. But also B, even if you missed, there's no fall damage. So you're absolutely fine. And I have to say, I prefer that. I'd rather like, can you just like. I know what I want to do. My character can do it. Just do it, please.
Look, we all know why we're here. We have to jump on Steve's head.
We also saw
Watch Dogs.
Yes, a sort of this felt like a bit of a recap of how that works. We've seen a lot of headlines of like, this explains how the play as anyone mechanic works. I think they already explained that pretty much. There's nothing in here that I didn't already know about how it works.
I think one thing which, in retrospect, I should have realised, but I didn't, was that characters have randomised traits. I don't remember that being made as explicit, but I mean, it made sense to me because I thought, surely there can't be just like 8 archetypes. It has to be more than that. And I guess these little like may have a heart attack while walking along the Thames thing is like a trait that you have.
Yeah. They showed like a lawyer who has, when they're on your team, I guess, that anyone who gets arrested, there's a 25% chance they just get out of jail for free. And a brawler who, when they're drunk, only takes 50% damage. I'm very interested how, we were talking earlier about how the player will kind of spot the algorithm. This is trying to relate those traits to the person's profession, because it gives you, like previous Watch Dogs games have done, they give you all this personal information about them. You're always violating people's privacy and finding out like how much they earn and where they work and all this stuff. And previous games, wasn't surprising to me that they were able to do that, because you just fill a giant spreadsheet full of facts and make sure. There's probably some stuff about like, if they were an accountant, maybe they have to wear a suit or something, some restrictions like that. But it wasn't blowing my mind that this was possible. But if you're then going to tie gameplay traits to these things, it's easy. If you gave me 8 gameplay traits and a 100 professions, I can find you professions that match those gameplay traits. But if you're going to give me a city of thousands of people, and each one of those has to have a pairing of job and trait that makes sense without it getting interminably repetitious, that's impressive if they can pull that off.
So what I dare say they'll do is they'll put all the lawyers in the city bit, the City of London, city bit. They'll put the kind of the pensioners, like the dying 20% of the time, or whatever it is, pensioners, which somehow has a purpose. Okay. And
I think
so
that's not his only upside. I think he has a bonus with rifle damage, because I think he used to be a soldier or something. Then they have
so it's kind of like
perk.
a plus and a minus.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of like economy going on there, where if you have a drawback, you're allowed to have 2 advantages or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't seem like they're meant to be exactly equivalent to each other in terms of power. Like, you could probably just find one who's better than the others.
But fundamentally, that'd be the same sort of general system as an RPG, in which kind of the creature that you're looking for a certain kind of hide from to craft the thing is found in this forest.
Yeah, it's just a case of like making that match to real life London citizens, like, because it's one thing to show a crowd of people and they get a reasonable diversity of what they look like and what you might assume about what they do or how old they are and things like that, and then to make sure their actual gameplay stats kind of match up with that. Like I say, you can do it for a limited number of those things, but it seems like that pool would get stagnant really fast, because you making gameplay trees. I guess if it's 25% chance of letting someone out of jail takes 10 minutes to code at most. Like, if your system's set up for that kind of perk, that's trivial. So if they're just percentage buffs, then that's fine, I guess. I'm very interested to see how the promise. The promise is impossible. The thing that they're saying, you play as anybody. Well, they can't literally like. What's the population of London? It's in the millions,
12 million?
right? Yeah. So you can't literally have 12 million different NPCs. So there is some repetition. And so the whole marketing campaign for this thing is them telling us the thing we know can't be true, and us trying to figure out which compromises have you made. Because we're excited about about something like this. If you don't, you can play as 80 different people. I'm like, awesome. That's way more than any other game I can play of this kind. And I believe you can do that.
I think the way that I would do it would be so in Phantom Doctrine, which is like this spy-driven XCOM-like, characters have traits, but sometimes you're only shown one of them and the rest reveal themselves over time. So I wouldn't be surprised if it sort of manages you seeing all of them too fast. If you're just on the street looking at people, maybe you don't even know what traits they have. And only as you get closer to recruiting them does it become clear, so that they wait for people to invest time in someone before they reveal more of the possibilities.
Yeah. So previous Watch Dogs games, when you looked at someone in analysis mode or with your phone out or whatever, it would tag them and you'd see a fact, but it would be kind of random what that fact was. Right. So it might be someone's income, but you wouldn't see everyone's income necessarily. It would just sort of give you a weird little snippet. So they could do something like that, where they're like, because I would bet that they generate it on the fly. Would you think? As you start investigating someone, they pick traits that match what you already know about them.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, because they also have relationships and stuff, like the whole thing about recruiting them is you do some kind of favor for them. If they're resistant to dead set, you have to go and rescue their brother or help their... another thing I'm super curious about is how much variety do you have in those things? Because I made a game where you had each character had something they need to do. And I started from the premise of, like, these are going to be incredibly formulaic. I will never be able to make these endlessly different. So let's just pick a few standard things that make a lot of sense and just plug names into that.
But you didn't even have to worry about voice actors. The thing that blew my mind is that they voice acted that person explaining their motivation in the trailer. I mean, I know that... I don't know. I mean, do you really think they've...
I think I heard there's 20 personas for people. Okay. So it's not necessarily 20 different voice actors even. That's like a combination of voice actor and personality.
Right.
So, I wouldn't be surprised if it's sort of like 8 different voice actors and each one does, 2 or 3 different personas. And then... but even the job of like how you match those to certain appearances and stuff is quite a big one.
As you say, the problem isn't how many there are, because, as you say, 80 would be an incredible amount. The problem is how many are people expecting when they enter this game.
And this is, it's sort of starting to get a bit of a No Man's Sky vibe in terms of like, make sure you're not, like, when people's expectations are sky high, your job is to manage them, not to keep increasing them. So just like, make sure people understand the practicality of what this really is.
I mean, I don't even care. You're just playing with a different fucking avatar.
Of course.
With a mild different stat line.
Come on. But I do care about it, or I think I will, because the thing that excites me about it is the idea that they're kind of resources, that you kind of, it's work to recruit them, so getting a good one means something, and therefore losing a good one also means something. So if I put in, this person had this amazing pair of traits where like they get a 50% bonus to assault rifles and also all their weapons they fire are silenced or something, and that's some especially good combination. I see that in their info and I'm like, okay, I'll do whatever it takes to recruit this person. And then when I do, and I'm playing as that person, there's this extra tension of like, God, I really don't want to lose this character. So if they can succeed in making me care that much about the differences in characters, and obviously there's this permadeath thing, that could add a lot, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Difficult.
They'll solve it. It's Ubisoft.
It'll be fine. This is the catchphrase of Gamescom, right? It'll be all right. Don't worry about it.
I think I'm a bit of a Ubisoft fan. Obviously I've been a long time Far Cry apologist. Like every new Far Cry game comes out and everyone's mad about it. I agree with all of their criticisms, but I really love it because the gameplay systems are getting so much more competent and they're just refining this. It's a craft of making gameplay systems that work in an open world game like that, and especially stealth systems. Yeah. And open world stealth stuff is very much my jam, and they're just getting better and better at it with every iteration, even as they fuck up the plot stuff in a new way each time. And then, I've been obsessed with Assassin's Creed Odyssey now, and like Origins I really, really liked, and I talked about what I liked at the time, and then Odyssey just crossed some threshold where I'm just like, okay, now this is my catnip. I can just play this forever. And it's because their systems got better, and they're just good at, like, they make a game and some of the systems work and some of them don't, and then they refine it. And that's what they get flack for, is their open world games they have so many things in common. But that's because there is an element of science, an element of craft to making these things work in that catnip way. The thing that's working for me is this kind of, you just got everything right, it all functions in the way that I want it to work, and I can do the things I want to do, and you've figured out a way to make me excited about progressing and about exploring and all this other stuff. And even amongst all the people who are bitching about seeing too many icons in their mini-map, the games are still selling really well because there's a whole load of people who just like things that work well. And I think I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of faith that, Watch Dogs 2, I never played Watch Dogs 1, but I really like Watch Dogs 2. And from everything I've heard from like literally every person who's played both, Watch Dogs 2 is far, far better.
Oh yeah.
They'll probably make this one better than Watch Dogs 2 because they're just good at iterating on things and getting better at the craft and understanding what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, the only thing that seems dramatically different is the tone. Like, the tone shift from Watch Dogs 1 to 2 was really good. And I am not sure where Legion is landing yet, because we're still in trailer mode.
One was kind of edgy.
Yeah, it was very edgy.
Yeah,
two was kind of... Two seemed, I didn't play either of them, from the outside, it seemed kind of to have a sense of fun, but not sort of like didn't take pleasure in awful things.
Yeah, exactly. Guns were not really a thing.
They were. You can't. Everyone you take out in Watch Dogs 2 is dead. Your melee weapon is like a snooker ball or pool ball in a like sling, and you whack people with that, those people are dead. They never get back up again. It
Says
it
the
has
Stab Master General.
Look, his signature makes a very clear delineation between people who are knocked out and people who are dead. And so does Gunpoint, but it doesn't have any gameplay consequence. So your Watch Dogs, it did have this bright and breezy atmosphere, and it felt like the game hadn't quite caught up to it. And actually, Assassin's Creed hadn't until I feel like Odyssey might be the first one where you can do non-lethal. Could you do it in Origins? Previously, like you just kill everybody.
Yeah.
And in Odyssey, the only option is you can kill them or you can make them work on your ship, which everyone is up for without question. And those are the only two ways to take out enemies. But yeah, this I don't know anything about whether the new Watch Dogs lets you. Is there non-lethal stuff in it?
There must be. Tasers.
Yeah, it's ringing a bell. Actually,
you can punch people. That normally implies non-lethal punching, I guess. Yeah.
You can nag them online on your phone.
Yeah,
you could just not recruit them. Passive aggressively not recruit them.
But the trailer had a certain kind of irritating kind of frivolity while watching two people smash each other's faces in a fucking alley.
I think they do have a tone problem. And they also have a voiceover problem. The voiceover of the last trailer was awful because it was obviously not someone who actually has that accent, because they just seem to get certain like vowel sounds wrong. And this one, they've changed the voiceover actor, but it took a second watching just now to twig what felt off about it, and it feels like the script was written for the last voice actor. In that it's just kind of trying to be, it's kind of like a tough guy kind of colloquialisms and just like trying to sound like that, but then the voice actor they've hired is a much more kind of middle class kind of guy. They're still trying to emphasize their Britishness and their accent a little bit, but it does.
He's got a bit of London in there.
Yeah,
but it's like there's like a very sharp delineation from the bits that are London and the bits that aren't.
Yeah. It's strange that they keep fucking this up, because London's not an obscure like
it's
little
where they
town out
decide
of the way
to set the game.
Don't Ubisoft have an office there somewhere? Surely they must do like some kind of office.
I know it's in Guildford.
Okay. Could they make a field trip? just
set it
try
in
it out. They'd like to find one person who's lived in London for a long time and speaks like that.
Was there anything
Yes,
else?
there was Amplitude's thing, which is called HumanKind.
Oh, yeah.
Which is... So Amplitude, the makers of Endless Legend and Endless Space and all that stuff. And now they're making a Civ, it seems. HumanKind is... looks like Civ. That's all I got. Like, there's a long CGI trailer that meant nothing to me. And then
Did it have cavemen in it?
I don't recall
Did
if
it
the CGI bit did.
Athenians in it?
Look, it was CGI, so I literally, my brain just switched off until I saw something look like a game, and then I paid attention to that, so I can tell you all about the bits that look like a game.
I think there was like a caveman at like a DJ deck. Or something. That's like what I remember, right? That's how I remember it. Like,
I didn't even see that.
I don't know.
I skipped to the end where there was like hexes and shit. Like, okay, now it's a game. Okay, now you're telling me something.
What's the tone of the music? So like, because I still get you know the Civilization
Baba Yetu
4, fucking hell, that song.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. I mean, did you like Endless Legend? Did you play Endless Legend?
I do like
Endless Legend. I did briefly, and I liked it, and then never went back to it.
Yep.
There's something about it which I just found really hard to pass. Like, I don't understand what the shorthand, all of the terms mean.
The difficulty when,
translation is a translation job.
So the thing that Endless Legend is really, really good at is all of the factions are really different in like a fundamental way. So there's one that lives on money. They don't need food. Like the money in that world is called dust, and they are these weird like hollow suits of armor with just like glowing dust flowing through them, and the dust is their life force. So if they can just get money, they can live off that. There's the necrophages who are just like they can never be at peace with anybody. They're always automatically at war with everybody, and when they kill a race, I think they eat the bodies, and that makes them stronger in some way. And so it's the death ball race. You get this one mob of necrophage troops, and they roll over everything, and they just get stronger and stronger. And then there's like one faction that can only ever have one city, but it's a mega city and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And they can still I think they can claim other lands, but they have it's harder for them to defend because they can't really make a new city there. But they keep adding districts to this one mega city in the middle. Then there's one that I think their only city moves around. Maybe that's the same one. Maybe the mega city can move. But there's kind of like a nomad one, and they all trade in the game goes through them. So if they exist in the game at all, every trade you do with everyone, they get a cut of it. So they get some percentage of the money that you trade. And then there's another one that I think was a DLC race that they have a pair of traits that sound really funny together. I can't remember what they both are. Something like loves technology but can't research.
I love computers. If only I could actually conceive of one and kind of have it.
Sort of a doomed romance here. Star-crossed lovers, us and technology. But it turns out they're the espionage faction, and so they can only steal technologies. So they have to wait for someone else to research it, and then they infiltrate them, and they can take a tech that way. So they're really good at just making those factions completely different. And I love thinking that their take on Civ will just be like, Sweden can only eat the dead. British people can subsist only on dust.
Yeah, that's going to be tricky, right? Because the thing that allowed them to do that unique stuff is much trickier when it's real nations. Then you end in like serious stereotyping territory. Like Civ always like dipped its toe in the edge of stereotype lake. But it sounds like we won't be about to jump in fully. But it sounds like you have faith in them to make a good TBS.
Yeah, I think so. Their games are always interesting, and they always have a kind of different spin on it. A really nuts and bolts practical thing I really want them to do is a thing that kind of ended up preventing me from going back to Endless Legend was just that it's so much about grabbing the best land first, and like Civ is, and that's the bit I love about Civ, and the land grab, and in Gal Civ as well, that phase of like, oh my god, I've just found the pristine spot that has amazing resources, I must get there first, I will kill my own people to produce a settler faster if I have to, I've got to get it, and that part is thrilling. And in Endless Legend, the view where you can see what resources everything has, there's this one decision they made that I think is completely wrong-headed, which is even if it has 0 of that resource, it still shows the icon and the number. And so every tile has to have like 4 different numbers and icons on it, even though most of them have 0 of like most of those things. So the ones that are valuable don't leap out to you. There's just this absolute wall of numbers. And you have to like really like scan over them to see, is that one good? No, that one's not good. No, is that one good? Is that one good? Like, for God's sake, like just hide the ones that aren't special. And even, I think it's actually, it might not be true that like most of them have 0 in most of the values. I think they might all have kind of 1 in most of those values, which is just nothing. You just don't care about it. It's the ones, some of them have 5 or 6 in one of those values. Fucking show me a bar graph. Like make those glow. They should be sparkling and exploding. Like the excitingness is there, but you're hiding it from me. And there's no reason to do that. It would be even more exciting if you could celebrate it and like bring it to the forefront. That's all we saw from Gamescom that caught our eye, I think.
Yeah, is it still going on? There might be some.
That was opening night live.
Yeah, it's always Gamescom.
I think it does end on like Friday.
It's Gamescom somewhere, wherever you are in the world.
It's Gamescom in my heart.
Another thing going on is the International.
Yeah.
I can't speak to that, but Mike, you can.
Yep, there has to be at least one Dota person on the pod at all times. So this was the first year that it was taking place in China instead of the US/Canada, which is where it's been before. And what that primarily means is that I can't watch it as easily because it's at a really awkward time of the day. But it's been fantastic. It's been interesting to see the change in the professional scene over the years as the focus has been more on like developing this competitive framework where if you win a big tournament during the year, you earn points towards an invite. So some teams knew they were coming to the International, this massive, like, the tournament that matters. You know, it's 33 million this year, I think.
Oh my God.
Lord. I remember when it was ridiculous. 2 million.
Yeah, wasn't the first one like 1?
Yeah. And
wow,
then I remember,
that is crazy.
2013 was 1.6 million. And at the time, that seemed like such a huge increase on 1 million. Such a big deal.
Yeah.
Whereas now, if you came like 8th, you would win more money than the winners won in the first one. So,
what is, just for reference, what was the Fortnite prize that was won recently?
That was again 30 I remember 30 million.
I know that
This is more I heard.
I know that they were investing 100 million in total, right, into their projects, like over a couple of years. So I don't know how much. Yeah. So I don't know how much specifically the grand prize was at that.
Because most of this money for Dota comes from the compendium thing they sell, right?
From me and Chris. No, absolutely. Valve's tactics for maximizing that have been interesting to see a shift over the years.
Just to get a picture of it, is the increase all due to compendium sales, or are Valve putting in more themselves?
I believe the starting pool was a couple of million this year from Valve, and the rest has been from sales. And bearing in mind that I think only a quarter of what's spent goes into the compendium. So what Valve, what Valve is making as a result of this, and in fairness,
they're making 99
they're
million.
making a lot.
99 million off that.
And of course, places like Reddit have very strong opinions on whether this is value for money or not. I have to say, as usual, the venue itself is incredible. The things that they're doing, on site, are really wonderful. Obviously, it's also making them a lot of money. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. At least partly. But I don't know. There's something about the numbers involved are terrifying, but the spectacle of the event itself is still incredible. And there's always a massive game-changing patch after the international, or at least a month after. And so there's no reason to save anything now. It's all cards on the table. These are the last 6 days of Dota that matter for the rest of this season. If you have a strat that you've been hiding, now is the time to play. And you just see fantastic stuff. I mean, I don't know if I've missed maybe some pro games, but there's this hero called Io, who, as long as I've played the game, has been a support hero, the supportiest of support heroes. Its only purpose is to connect itself to someone else and channel things into them. But not anymore. Now Io is being played by one team as the core of the entire team. It gets all of the money, all of the farm. It becomes this ball of light that will destroy you in a couple of seconds. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing the first time I watched a game do this. And
so these pros come up with the strat that works kind of in secret, and they don't really show it in the proper tournaments until it really counts.
It's hard to tell in some cases, because these pro teams often scrim each other in private to practice. And sometimes teams will say, we saw this strategy in scrims, but it hadn't been used in a public match yet. And they don't always share information about what goes on. Or sometimes a strat will fail in a scrim, and so other teams will be like, nah, whatever, we beat it then. And then it comes out in force, on the main stage, and they've made a tweak somewhere, which is really
So they show us sort of a weak version, and then they...
Or maybe they just went back to the drawing board and they figured out what was wrong with it.
I think that happens in the StarCraft 2 pro community is a lot of pro players have a second account, and that's what they use to play on ladders, so that not... if they have some crazy new strategy that no one's ever seen before, obviously that wouldn't keep that secret. But it means that when their opponent looks them up to watch all their matches, all their past matches, they've got something in the bag that their opponent hasn't seen.
Well, one of the interesting things we've seen over the last couple of years is AI become a part of the team's strategy, coaches and managers. There are companies that produce tools to analyze replays for teams. And there's actually a few papers at this conference of we can predict if someone is going to die in the next 30 seconds, or we can predict who's going to win this game based on who is farming versus who is killing people. There's a lot of AI getting involved here, and for 35 million, why not?
Because when it's 1.6 million, that's just that is a healthy sport, right?
It's pretty good. Yeah.
But then when it's 30 million, that's a fucking industry.
Isn't there something with the compendium where you sort of bet on it, or do you get rewarded if the team you're rooting for wins something?
There's a bunch of things in the compendium. So one of them is you can predict things like which hero will be picked the most, which team will win, and you get little point rewards for that.
How late can you do that, and can the AI help?
There's a guy called Ben Steenhuisen. Hope I pronounced his name. Probably not. That's why I did it in the lower voice. But he runs a website called DatDota with some other volunteers, which just analyzes reams of pro Dota information. And mostly it's used by commentators and analysts. But every year he does this, I've crunched the numbers with some statistics, and here are what I am putting in my compendium. And I used his this year. I just used all of his suggestions. And his reasoning is really interesting sometimes. Sometimes he'll go against what the computer says, because he thinks that some factor isn't being included in somewhere, which I love reading those explanations. But
what do you get if you're right?
You get points. You know what points mean? They mean tiny digital rewards. So points unlock sometimes they unlock temporary things.
Is this a Valve?
Yeah, you have this little ticker in your compendium. So the compendium is like a digital sticker book, kind of. And you actually get little player cards, which are used in a fantasy team thing. So there are like lots of little features. The ones that people like most are, it unlocks special chat wheel commands just for the international. And some of them are famous lines from previous commentaries. So if you've ever seen a clip of Dota where the commentator says something, very, very loud and exciting.
It's a disaster!
That's one of the expensive ones. You need a very high-level compendium to be able to say that.
That's the only Dota thing I know.
So last year there was a very famous one where a commentator called OD Pixel shouted the name Seb, which was one of the players, and he shouts, Seb! Like, it's a really long Seb. And honestly,
Get that long Seb.
On one hand, I hate it because this was just designed to get more money out of you. The higher level your compendium is, the longer your Seb is when you run the voice command. So there are people who have put hundreds of pounds into the compendium, and it lasts for like 5 or 6 seconds. And it's so bad that it's the only voice line that you can't use for another 50 seconds because they know what's going to happen otherwise.
I have to kind of admire that grift.
It's a great grift. Idea. It's incredible. And what makes it even more incredible is that obviously teams are now playing against that player, and they have compendiums, and every time he dies, you get a bunch of Sebs coming out from the opposing team. Or vice versa, like when he's doing well, his team will sometimes do it for him as well.
This is just blowing my mind.
It's so meta.
It's so, there's no existing sport has this incredible kind of layer of meta stuff, which is just commentating on itself, almost live.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. And I don't know, it's hard. Every year we ask, was the compendium worth it this year? Was it worth the money we put in? But there's no doubt that there's so much inventive, weird cultural stuff that comes out of it. And the voice lines are a great example. They had this other thing where you get a number of drums, and you can place a drum, and then if you right click as if you were attacking a hero, your hero will attack the drum and it'll make a little drum noise.
Wow,
and for a while, enemies could also attack the drums. And so at the beginning of the game, you would just sort of sometimes you would have this awkward positioning where you weren't sure if a fight was going to break out, and now you just put a drum down and everyone plays the drums for a little bit. It's completely bizarre, absolutely bizarre. Of course, they had to fix some exploits that came out because they didn't realize the ways in which people were going to use these things. But it's been great. But one of the best things about it is the intense, all out, every last drop of skill. Every minor calculation is coming in, and it's only thanks to the analysts and the commentators that you can really appreciate it, or at least I can. I'm not a good enough player. So in a game I was watching just last night, a player on the team EG, I think, steals an item from one of the other players. So this normally can't happen. Items in your inventory, they don't exist in the real world. But for some reasons, certain reasons, pro players will put an item on the floor. So let's say you have an item that restores mana over time, and you also have an item in your inventory that gives you plus maximum mana. So it's more efficient to drop it on the floor, because the amount you're getting from this potion is going to be constant. No matter whether you have this bonus max mana or not. So I drop my mana boots, so my max mana goes from 400 to 200, and then when I drink the mana potion and then I pick the boots up, it will now proportionally. It's a little bit high. It's such a fiddly weird edge case mechanic. It just
increases the rate.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So it's very common to see pro players do this. And at some point, one of the commentators realizes that S4 is running around with someone else's boots, and because you can hover over them, and it will say "owned by," and it will say the player's name. And then one of the other commentators says, "But why hasn't he destroyed it? Because you can put an item on the floor and attack it to kill it. Why carry it around with you? It's taking up space."
So he can't use it?
He can't use it. It's grayed out. It's locked. There is no reason to have it. Sometimes you keep it as a trophy and then you drop it in front of the enemy at the end of the game, but, not for $36 million.
Your mana boots, motherfucker.
And after a while, one of the analysts says, well, of course he's going to keep it with him, because when you die in Dota currently, the amount of gold you give to the enemy is based on your net worth. So the amount of all of the items that you have purchased and own. And the way the game is coded, he still owns those boots, even though they're in someone else's inventory, which means he's worth more when you kill him. And one of the commentators was explaining, he thinks that that's the reason why the boots weren't destroyed. And we're talking we're talking like a few pennies of gold probably. But these players are at the top of the edge. Like every edge play you could possibly make, every like tiny advantage you could get over the enemy, that's what they're playing for. And these things are just like,
this seems a lot more logical than dropping the boots and attacking them. That seems like the irrational. What the fuck are you doing? Why do you need to destroy his boots?
Well, normally you wouldn't even pick them up in the first place.
Right?
You know, you would just like attack them then and there.
This actually, weirdly, this reminds me of a thing we saw today at the Roman Baths here in Bath. That struck me as emerging gameplay, which is, so at the baths here, one of the most interesting things that you can see is the curses that people throw into them. So one of the things that like ancient Romans would do is they write a curse on a little piece of lead and throw it into the baths. And there's lots of things that like, Tullius stole my robe, please. He is absolutely accursed. Grumpy things that they say about this. Sometimes they give a list of suspects. It's one of these fucking 8 people, which we
just get them all.
Yeah,
that way we can't fail.
The logic of this is amazing because you're asking a god for help. So it's like the god will God will know which one it is, but not from like everyone. Let's narrow it down. Everyone needs leads. Give it like usual suspects is one of these 8, just to give you a hand. I know you're omnipotent, but like if you like, it'll probably help you out to know it's one of these 8 people.
Just to speed up the process.
One person said, X stole my, I can't remember if it was like shoes or cloak or something. I give them to the god, was it Aquesulus or something, so that you may, exact whatever thing you need to get it back. Like, because he still owns the boots. The fact that someone's stolen from him, he's still entitled to give them to the gods. These are technically mine, I still own them. I give them to you, God. Between you two now, good luck against the god.
You sort that out. I'll just sit here. Oh wow, that is the same. That
feels
is
like a life hack.
The same as the Dota hack.
They were fantastic. Yeah.
Wow. Did you play any games lately?
Looking at me.
Tom, I know you're itching.
All right. So sorry, but I'm going to talk about Fire Emblem a bit. I'm going to, with some...
Can you justify this, Tom?
Thank you for asking, because yes, I can. Part of it is I myself have been craving Fire Emblem chat anywhere I can get it, and
I'm still surprised. This doesn't make any sense.
I know, I'm so shocked.
It's unusual, even with a game I really like. I want to hear all the Outer Wilds chat if I possibly can, but not to the same extent that I want to hear Fire Emblem chat. I want to hear everything everyone has to say about Fire Emblem chat, and that I realised this is what gossip is. Fire Emblem has a cast of like 40 characters. I'm really personally invested in like 9 of them. And hearing other people talking about those characters and just like either bitch about them or praise them or whatever, like all of it's good. I'm just like lapping it up. Yes, tell me what you think about Bernadetta. I have mixed feelings on her. A lot of people just fucking love Bernadetta. And it's really interesting to hear why. And they all have different takes on those characters. And they have different like ideas about whether these characters are good or bad. And there's stuff like... there's this character Dorothea in my class who is very flirty, and she kind of is trying to be like a fun character, but a lot of that stuff falls flat. And I haven't been super enthusiastic about her, but
when you say, can we just? So you're saying I am not enthusiastic about it. Do you mean like as a person you're not enthusiastic about it? You just don't really like her, or are you saying as a dramatic character it's shit?
Oh, well, once you get into the game, that kind of all fades away. You're too in it. You're just like, it's actually really strange. It's hard to step back and think about what the developers are doing and how much they know, because the whole game is so openly, it just throws around terms like noble and commoner in a very casual way. And it has, most of your people you're dealing with are nobles, almost all of them. There are a couple of commoners. And so it's very noble focus. It's about nobility, and it's about almost all the characters you're asked to care about are literally the heirs to empires. They're hugely important. But it has this hint that it's somewhat aware of this. And you're working for this church, and it doesn't feel like a good church. There are just so many little red flags of like, these fuckers do not seem good. But I'm 25 hours in, and it's still, the shoe has not dropped. It's still like, we're still working for them. There's still no ability to do anything against them. But it's just, I really get the impression that the developers know that what they're presenting is not a purely good thing. And so, and then all the characters are kind of caricatured, but all of them have a bit of a journey that they go on. And so there's a thing, This is only worth mentioning just to laugh at me, but and also the game because it's insane. But the whole thing is like you have the cast of characters, and they, by putting them next to each other when they fight, they develop their relationships. They get a little bond plus thing. The little heart symbols come out of them, show they've bonded, and that's cool. But doing that levels up their support level, and the support level actually gives them a buff. Now, although when they're standing next to each other, they get 10 extra aim or something. But every now and then I'd look at the menu, and next to the word support, I had a little exclam. And so I'd click on the word support, and I'd see a big list of all... You can choose any character and see their support level with every other character, which is a huge number of combinations. And I would see, okay, they have C in black, and now the B is glowing blue. Cool, they've hit B. That's what it's telling me. I quit out the menu, I go back to the game. Done that for 20 hours. 21, I look at that menu again, and I'm sort of scrolling through it, just looking at these values, and I try to quit out of the menu by pressing the button that on an Xbox controller would quit out of the menu, but on a Switch controller confirms. Uh-huh. And by selecting the glowing bee, it plays a cutscene that shows what happened when these... Well, in fact, basically, by viewing that cutscene, you see a bit of, voice-acted, custom conversation between these two characters that brings them to support level C. So, there are like 9 characters in my class. Each of them has a different support level with all the other 8. Every single one of them has leveled up, and I haven't watched any of these cutscenes. So I have literally 81 cutscenes to watch. And the other thing is, they aren't support level B until you watch the cutscene.
So all this time they've not even liked each
in my
other.
entire 21 hours, no one has ever leveled up with each other at all.
You were talking last week very specifically about how, they're really getting on with each other.
They're all standing around the university like, where's Tom? Like, we've been waiting to have this moment. But,
I've got this latent appeal with them, but, well, we can't act on it.
No, so actually my relationships, every time you hit support level with someone new, it just happens. You just see the cutscene, or you get a prompt that says, hey, do you want to go see Edelgard? Because you feel like you should. And so I say yes, and I watch that cutscene. So that taught me, this stuff comes to you. You don't need to do anything. And then I learned there's 81 cutscenes for me to watch about this.
Did you watch them?
Yes.
Oh my!
Bit by bit, like over the course of several months of gameplay, dipping into it occasionally. I pick the characters I care about first, and then slowly work my way to the ones I fucking hate. But this is mind-boggling because there are 9 characters in my house. Their relationship with each other might be 81 or something in that region. I haven't done the maths exactly, but there are 40 characters in the whole game, and actually everyone has a support level with everybody, and each of those has multiple levels, like B, A, like C, B, potentially A in some cases, potentially S in some cases. So the number of combinations in that pool of people for all the different things. I mean, maybe like someone in my class can only have a support level C with someone else in their class, but I think there's still a cutscene for that. And even if it's only the individual classes, like my house is 81 cutscenes, another house will be another 81 cutscenes, another house will be another 81 cutscenes, and that's just for support level C. Support level B, another 81 for each one of those things. How did they make this much game? How does this exist?
Yeah.
And it's insane that they don't flag it up better and tell you that you should watch these things, or just put them in front of your face and just say, hey, you've got to watch this to get the stat boost, by the way. You can skip it. You can start watching it and skip it. And I have done with some. But actually, it's been, for the most part, it's been refreshing. Like, I didn't really want to watch Ferdinand and Dorothea because I didn't trust the game to do that interaction well. Ferdinand is my noble asshole. Every house has one noble asshole. There's the womanizing noble asshole, and there's the Ferdinand is the in love with nobility noble asshole.
Yeah.
And then in the third house, Golden Deer, they have a noble who is a womanizer on the basis of being a noble. Like, he keeps trying to seduce people on the basis of, like, I'm a noble. Hey, date me. So Ferdinand is the least asshole-ish of the 3, I think, but he's still a fucking asshole. And Dorothea is also a bit flirty, and Dorothea is very flirty with everybody. And I was like kind of wincing, do I really want to watch them together? Not really, because she's going to flirt and he's an asshole, and I just don't want to see it.
Thank God.
But I did watch it, and actually it turns out that one of Dorothea's traits is she is the one who calls everyone on their bullshit, and she's like a really good kind of psychoanalyst. Everyone she meets is like, you are doing this for this bullshit reason, and it's bullshit, so stop fucking doing it. And all these support conversations, by the way, if you're imagining they are bonding exercises,
about 90% of them are just, I have drilled to the core of your soul and I'm going to rip you to shreds. The last support level C thing I had with Hubert, he threatened to kill me. You've reached support level C. So yeah, I've been lapping up any chat about that, and I think it's because this is the thing I want to gossip about. I don't watch a lot of reality shows and stuff. It's scratching that itch for me. Yeah. But I can point those units around and have them kill things with bows. Which I just can't do with Love Island, no matter how much I try. There was another thing that made me laugh. There's two things to do with, like, there's these loyalty quests that it does not flag up and does not tell you they're as important as they are. And I finally did one of them, and it's like one character, someone has proposed to them, and Dorothea, the aforementioned Dorothea, happens to know this asshole and says, he's an asshole, don't accept that marriage proposal. And she's like, but he does have a good family, maybe we should just see if his intentions are right. And you say, okay, let's do this interesting dramatic thing. Cut to your team in Lava World. Just on these precipices of lava. The last thing I said was like, let's investigate this guy. Now we're just in Lava World. We're being attacked by like 25 bandits. And then at some point during that mission, somebody mentions, I think that guy is sending the bandits after us because he works for that suitor guy. Why are we in Lava World though? How did we get here? I don't even remember leaving the monastery. And then the other insane thing about that quest, I don't think this is a particular spoiler, but you can skip it if you're really sensitive to spoilers. One of the rewards is like one character. So that quest is between two characters who you know, one of whom is Dorothea. The other one gives Dorothea a ring as a really, like, thank you so much. You basically saved my life. I was going to end up with this jerk, and you really saved me. And they come closer, and it's quite a well written scene. She gives her this ring, and then Dorothea says, thanks, but I actually think the professor should have this and decide what to do with it. This game is the most player-worshipping thing I've ever played. They're just like, whatever you want to do, just anything, just do whatever you like. Every valuable thing in this world will be funneled to you. Every power will be given to you. Every privilege will be given to you. You are king and god and the best combat person who's ever lived. I did a mission, again, mild spoilers. I'll keep it very vague. But some people were trying to steal an ancient relic. And in a cutscene, when you sort of finally confront them, in desperation as they're stealing it, you grab it off them and hit them with the sword and kills them. And then you go back to the base and they're like, oh yeah, you just keep that. No, you seem pretty good at it. You just have it. It's fine. That was the whole point of the mission, was to stop them stealing it. But once you've got it, it's just, oh, actually, you just keep it. You're really good. You're awesome. You're amazing. Like, it's player worshipping just to the point of absurdity. Like, the whole thing gets tissue paper thin as soon as I'm involved. And just that thing of like this deeply personal moment between two characters. Someone gives someone else a ring and is like, turns to camera. Would you like it? Since you're the player, you should actually have it. And they didn't even need to do that because you control all these people anyway. So
you've got
I have access to their inventory.
If
I thought that ring, like, it regenerates health, it does have a practical benefit. If I thought I need that on someone else, actually, I could just take it from my inventory. Like, I already have the power to do that. But they actually make it part of the narrative that, like, I won't accept this personal gift. I'm going to give it to my fucking teacher, who's also here for some reason.
I just don't understand why you're playing it. I like Fire Emblem. I've played a lot of the previous ones, but. Yeah.
It's all right. So if you really want
to know, weird. They've really doubled down on stuff that, it's interesting. Like, we were talking about Ubisoft being the iterative company. Like, Nintendo is also the preeminent. Like, they've been iterating on sort of, on the things that they make and the ideas they have ever since, Mario. It's totally fascinating the way they work. And I mean, it's not actually a specific. They just published this game. It's made by Intelligent Systems, isn't it? Isn't it? It always used to be. But it's interesting the things that they've picked from the previous games, and sounds like they've dialed it up so far. It's so weird.
Apparently, this one's less romance focused than the other ones, which makes sense because it's like
so. Awakenings is basically the end game. Is you getting the characters that you've kind of nurtured up to that point to create children, like, and you basically then have your uber army of characters that have the specific traits that you want, and there's some really powerful ones that you just cannot get in the first slate.
So they inherit traits from their parents.
Yeah, there's some sort of, I can't remember exactly what the mechanic is because I never played that far because that was like 40 hours in or something.
Yeah,
I still haven't got there, you know.
I've been assured at some point you stop being a teacher to a bunch of students because there is some romance in it, and that does not happen while you're a teacher to a bunch of students.
Thank God.
But mostly it's asking the question over and over again, like, who do you like? Which of the characters are you interested in? Which ones do you like spending time with? And so your question about, like, is Bernadette like an interesting character or is she a likable character? I think for me, it's a bit of both. It's a little bit leaning towards interesting, actually, because my initial impression was none of these characters are people I would want to hang out with and actually be friends with. But I picked Black Eagle because Edelgard, the head of that house, is interesting. And that keeps being confirmed the more I talk to her. She's someone who's like, they all have this destiny to inherit this empire, and she is just fucking metal about it. She is like, I have already waded in this pool of blood and it expands ever around me. She is like, the normal thing for like a young sheltered child to be about the thing they're going to inherit is naive, right? They're like, oh, it's going to be amazing. We're like, just can't wait to be king. And she is just like, this is going to be hell. And I'm fucking ready for it. And I will destroy my enemies. I'll do whatever it takes. She's so up for like the horror of it. And that's just really interesting to me. I haven't seen that before, so I'm like, okay, great.
Signing up.
But I mainly joined that house because I was judging everyone by their looks. Anyone with like cool hair or something interesting about them, I was up for. And Petra is the most interesting looking character of them all. She has cool hair. She has a facial tattoo that no one else has. That's kind of intriguing. That's she's from a different like continent. And
I didn't even know you like facial tattoos.
And she also, like, her uniform was different for some reason. Like, putting people in school uniform, I can imagine that, like, whoever is lead character artist in that game, when they told them, hey, it's in a school, everyone's wearing the same uniform. No! There's 40 characters. I can't make them all different if they are all in the same uniform. So Petra is wearing a slightly different uniform. And it was a completely superficial thing. But then she's kind of endearing because she's struggling to speak the language. So she speaks in these like slightly weird phrases that sometimes really funny. And that's as good as a personality trait as you get that early on. But then watching all of her loyalty things, you know, that huge menu of support conversations has been fascinating because there's a conversation where she and the guy who's defined by sleep.
I was asking how I was going to ask how he is.
He's just got the sleep thing still. That's still his own thing. Well, except actually in this cutscene, there's a little bit of more depth to him. He walks in on Petra training. This is like, so what is Lindhart and Petra? What the fuck is that relationship like? And that's kind of the addictive thing about this is like, with 81 combinations, what does that?
Yeah, what do you do with the character, the sleep skills of one that trains mainly?
The more I say it, the more I think it's not 81. I think it might be significantly less than that. It might be like 40. But anyway, Lindhart and Petra, he's the sleepy guy. He walks in on her. She's like a hunter by upbringing, I think, and she's really hardworking. And that's kind of what's endearing about her is it's not that she's getting the language wrong, it's that she's working really hard to get it right whilst also excelling at combat and doing all the other stuff everyone else has to do. And so she's training really hard. Lindhart walks in on her and starts critiquing her technique. Like, oh, you could do better with the spear. Like, as you jab, your left arm is too low. This is kind of interesting because Lindhart is like an academic. He's like a mage dude. He's studying all the time or sleeping all the time. So it's weird that he has such specific opinions about spear technique. But that's kind of interesting. It adds something to him. He's like, I guess he's like a sciencey guy. So he's seeing the sort of the physics of it and critiquing that. And she's like, I thought she was going to get pissed off at him because she's actually doing something and he's a lazy asshole. But she is just fascinated by oh, how do I do it? So what do you mean? What, my left arm's going too low? Can you show me how that works? And he says, no, I don't need to show you. It's lower. Just understand the physics of it. And he's basically a shitty teacher who also can't do what he's trying to tell her to do. But she doesn't get annoyed about being criticized. She's incredibly open to the criticism. She's excited about it. She's like desperate for the criticism. She's like, oh my God, fantastic. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. I'd love to learn more about how I'm doing this wrong. And she's pissed off with him because he won't show her exactly how to do it and she can't understand his intellectual version of it. And so they leave kind of frustrated and pissed off. Support level C. But that immediately is a really interesting and appealing character trait of someone who like absolutely welcomes criticism. And all they want to know, I just need the practical benefit. I'm like, fantastic. If you can help me be better at fighting, I really want to hear it. But she's frustrated because he can't tell her in the way that means something to her. And that's just a really cool character. It makes me really like her.
It's more nuanced than I thought it was. I thought it would kind of stay one-dimensional, as you were saying.
Yeah, it really starts from the caricature, and then I think each one is going to work their way back. I think I've heard of at least 2 different characters who are kind of like extremely shy and timid. Like Bernadetta, I don't know anything about why she's so scared or timid, but it's become clear she's not just like socially shy, ashamed, like scared of embarrassing herself. She literally thinks you're going to kill her. Because now I've watched like 9 cutscenes of her interacting with everybody. They all start with like her being surprised by them or something, and she's just literally, I can't believe I'm going to die right now. I'm so sorry for whatever I did to offend you. Please don't kill me. It's kind of dark. Like it's kind of played in very broad strokes, but it's clear like she actually fears dying at all times. It's not like just a cute little social affectation. Alex, you've been playing something.
I've been weirdly enough, it sort of links with quite a lot of what we talked about so far. Like I've been playing a short hike. The shortest hike. A short hike.
The shortest hike is where you already are.
It's really lovely. It is a short game, but like it's interesting because it's a very Nintendo-like game.
Yeah,
this game has been massively inspired by Animal Crossing specifically. You are a little birdie woman who has the big head and the very super simple kind of textured sort of features, and you're walking around an island which is viewed from above and across a little bit, very much like Animal Crossing. Everything is very, very colourful, and everything is purposefully pixelated. So it's gone all kind of, well, let's say N64. So what's the first Animal Crossing game was on N64? Animal something, I can't remember what it's called.
Yes, it had a funny, because it was at that time it was like kind of still an obscure title to the West.
Yeah, I don't think it came over here. Yeah. Anyway, so it does exist then, so it's fine. Because the resolution is too low, I would say, for GameCube. And in this game, you are on holiday staying with your ranger aunt on an island.
Do you start talking to your dad?
No, she's your Aunt May.
So I know the aunt in the thing, but like
right to the very start with the kind of text dialogue, maybe.
But I was listening to a Video Games Hot Dog talking about this game, and they're talking about your dad and how you talk to him, and I don't remember ever meeting my dad. So I'm like,
that must be.
If I did meet my dad, I did not know he was my dad.
Because the cutscene at the start is in the car, isn't it? But you play specifically only on the island. And the premise of the game is simply that there's no phone signal. So if you want to use your phone, you have to go to the top of the mountain where there is a phone signal.
I want to jump in and say that we shouldn't say what that phone call is.
Oh, yeah.
Because they mentioned it on the Video Games Hot Dog podcast.
Oh, did they?
No! Okay. Finding that out was such a good moment for me.
Yeah. No, it's and your character at the start is a bit indolent, like has lost sort of a sense of wanting to do things. It's lost energy, can't see the point of things, but is on this amazing island, as it turns out. The rest of the game is free for you to explore in the way you want, and that is powered by really lovely movement feel. So you run around nicely enough, but you can jump and then you can glide because you're a bird. But not a bird that is any good because you can't flap at the start of the game.
You're a bad bird.
You're a bad bird. But the glide is nice and sort of you kind of think, oh, it's fine. But then early on, you'll everyone will tell you about the golden feathers, and when you collect a golden feather, it buys you a flap. One flap per golden feather, and this flap will either, if you're gliding, get you slightly higher, or it will allow you kind of to flap up a cliffside for one flap.
You can climb as well.
That is the climb.
Scale. Yeah.
It's a flappy climb. Like birds do, maybe.
Because they tell you climbing is more efficient than flapping, right?
Yes, you probably can get more height. Yeah, definitely.
All birds know this. That's why you see so many birds scaling cliff faces.
But you...
How do you... I can't remember what the animation looks like. Are you gripping with your wings?
I never knew. It's weird. I think it's one of the things about it. Actually, would be the mildest criticism is that it's so pixelated and the view is so far out. It's impossible to know.
Yeah.
Like it can also be. It's a little frustrating at the start when you don't have much latitude for flapping.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get across from to a kind of like a thing you can't get up yet, but you can glide from a higher point nearby, it's really hard to judge the distance. And I fell off things over and over again. That is soon lost, that you soon sort of forget that once you're able to flap more, because you get, you just don't care. And you can sort of skip your way up stuff. And it becomes like a collectathon game to an extent. Like early on, there's a character that says, "Oh, can you collect 15 shells for me?" And that's actually nice because exploration around the seashore is pleasurable. And like, there's nothing it does gate stuff off to you simply because you can't get up there because it's high. So you just can't get up there. But most of the island is actually completely accessible, and you can actually just go the other way. Like the path takes you clockwise round to the left and then up round sort of thing. But you can totally go the other way completely, and you'll see totally
I did that.
Stuff. Yeah. Of course you don't.
2 to 4. Oh, you want me to go? I'll swim around the island to get to the right. And it let me do that. So
and the game totally doesn't care.
Yes,
Yeah. And you can feel like, the scale of it is such that you feel lost. Like you feel, oh God, I've really gone into the unknown now. And oh my God, look, there's a great big factory building, and now I'm in a kind of an autumnal forest. But you then find things that you're meant to find, or you see landmarks that you know so far. And I don't have a mental map of this place yet.
No,
but
I don't.
Somehow managed to find this amazing sweet spot between like size and variety and smallness, so that you can just come across things that kind of bind you back to familiarity. And it's a remarkable. And what's also remarkable is that it has like sort of sharp, like quite precipitous hills and forests which occlude your view because there are trees there, and they're all like buildings and things. And somehow you don't lose sight of yourself. Like there's a complexity of kind of terrain that doesn't get in the way of your enjoyment of going across it.
Did you ever have any trouble with the camera?
That you can, so the camera slightly could do a bit more polish, really. Though the camera kind of will follow where you are, but sometimes doesn't quite keep up.
It feels like it's got some predefined angles, right?
Yeah.
You go to this area and the angle changes, and if you're already moving, now the button you're pressing is, or the stick direction you're pressing now has a different meaning.
Yeah, that's true.
I had a big frustration with that very early on before I had a single feather, and possibly because I went a weird way, and I ended up scaling a mountain. I got to a bit where I now know I could not have gone any further because of the ledge I had to climb. I didn't have any climbing yet, but the camera wouldn't show me where I was. I was behind a thing, and in retrospect, I know that probably one of the reasons is that you can't go that way anyway at that point. But at the time, I'm like, I could if you'd show me where I fucking am. And so it was really annoying.
It doesn't even do a kind of a silhouette thing, which some games do.
It gives you like a microscopic amount of control over the camera. You can slightly move it
3 degrees left and right.
It just feels like I don't know what problem that was there to solve. Like if there was some...
I've never used it. Like I saw, that's useful, and then no.
That's a feature that would be useful in an isometric game. Yeah. It's a very isometric game. Sometimes things line up pixel perfect exactly, so one thing completely obscures the other thing. And if you could move the camera just 2 degrees, you'd be able to see, oh, okay, that's 2 different things. In this game, it wouldn't seem that useful, and it's a frustrating, because it teases, you can move the camera, but only this tiny amount.
Yeah, I thought again, I felt there was going to be an issue more at the start than the end, because at the end I was moving so quickly and sort of bouncing around and flapping and sliding. And
there's a point where you just start to feel like master of this, place, and you can just fly around freely. I was reminded of it because I was listening to a video game Hot Dog talking about this, and Zach, my friend Zach, absolutely hated it.
Really?
And I was shocked too. And I was like, what? How could you hate this game of all things? And actually, almost everything you mentioned was a frustration I did have. Like, I'd forgotten about that camera problem by the end of it because it was only really early on. He only played for 15 minutes, he said, and he kind of swam away from the island, and the camera kept turning around in a way that now he doesn't know which way is back to the island and which way is to the island, which is fair. I'm sure, the camera was somewhat annoying to me.
Come on, you swam away from the island. Come on, own your ambition.
I remember, this is an aside, but I remember Proteus developer.
Yeah, Ed
Key. God, sorry, Ed. Telling me that he had, I think it was like a friend's daughter played Proteus, and Proteus, you start in the sea right off the shoreline, and this beautiful kind of low color island, you swim towards it, and there's this amazing reactive soundscape where every object in the world is producing a different kind of rhythm and tone, and as you move around you create dynamic music. And his friend's daughter turned around 180 and swam out to sea. He said, but the island's back there. And she said, yeah, I thought I could find a better island. And that's what seeing someone play your game is like. It's been years making this beautiful wonderland, and they turn around immediately. So maybe there's a better one over here.
There is something about it which I think that I'm going to put this down to just being old and fucking grumpy, but the dialogue I find.
Oh no, I love the dialogue.
I mean, I like what the dialogue is trying to do, but it fits into a modern text style breeziness, which I'm getting really fucking tired of.
Oh, that's
and I don't think this is badly done in and of itself. It's just fitting into a category which I'm kind of getting really fucking tired of.
There was only one bit that felt kind of like of its time memey. That's a horrible word, but I like
own it.
But I liked it, which was the guy who is building sandcastles with a massive spade, like a full-size spade. And as it happened, I already had a sandcastle spade on me. And when you talk to him, you're like, wow, that's kind of a big spade you're making those castles with. And so, yeah, that's how you make sandcastles. Well, you can get like smaller spades that are designed for sandcastles. And said, all right, sounds fake. And that like sounds fake is of its time, I feel like. But it did make me laugh. Also.
Yeah, this the kind of the context is good.
Did you play Night in the Woods, Alex?
I did.
And what was your reaction to the?
Yeah, I think that was kind of one of the like early, or at least the sort of, and therefore, I felt definitely. This is not my generation, so it's kind of like almost a documentary for me. Like, this is how the youth are. Okay. So no, I mean, no, it would have done, but I think it's actually really well written, and kind of the characters kind of managed to pop out from the style.
Right.
And in this game, the characters are such caricatures, and that's fine because you're playing a fucking Animal Crossing, where this character is there to provide you with a spade, so like that's fine, and so my criticism is really isn't, but I am interested in like, is this a style we're going to be doing for a while? because it does have a really limited range. Like I think Night in the Woods demonstrated that you can definitely do sadness and kind of anguish, and it does have an emotional range, but I think that was because the caricatures were good, and the setting, like particularly with that game, the setting for me was just fascinating because it was a document of a certain place in America as it is now, and like that's fucking good, and doing something more than let's make it fun, And again, this isn't really criticism of A Short Hike because it is a fun game and it's a really short game, like on purpose, and you never want anything to last too long. But yeah, I hope it's success, and it's kind of the wonderful things about it don't kind of just make everyone think like that's the style to use for every fucking thing from now on.
Can you say any more about what this style is? Like, what is the objectionable part of it?
It's the lower cap sentence starts and lack of full stops.
Okay, well, that's fixable.
So it's
no, but it's a breeziness that
that's what I like.
and where everything is. Oh God, I'm trying to put a finger on it. There's a breeziness with too much meaning loaded on slight things. Like so, you know, like with the frog and you saying, that's fake. And like, that is funny. But like, there are other examples of that where it's some throwaway line and it's like, hey, gag. And it's like, hey, it's too fucking, come on. Like, give people a bit more space. Like, let them, I don't know, use punctuation.
The reason I asked is because I've seen, so I've heard similar reactions before, and I have struggled to put my finger on it, because like I knew that those feelings were connected between those two games that was why I asked you that question, and yet I couldn't figure out like what it is, but there is something there.
There's a very, I think it's a very self-conscious style. I think that's what it is. Like I think that it comes out of text speak, like and the way that has evolved over the past 15 years or whatever, and therefore there's a because it I think it's about presentation of self, but through a medium where you can construct every fucking, like, where every space means something. Right. And I think for me, it means that there's nothing ever guileless in anything, in the style that as it's kind of comes across to me, because you know that it's all been studied and learned from other places. And that's like the very aesthetic that it comes from. And
it's funny because
that's very cool. That's fine. It's just that I think that it has actually quite a narrow emotional range.
It's really interesting because Twitter is such like a sort of a hotbed for like inventing formats for tweets, right? I'll stop saying meme because it's not really what I mean, but like, and some of them feel like they're going to be gone tomorrow, and some of them feel to me like they're worth sticking with.
This could be the next,
there's like so the one where it's like nobody : and then no text, and then something, and the gist of it is whatever you put after that is doing something really extra and extreme. You're trying to say like nobody fucking asked this, like you're just coming out of nowhere. It's very spontaneous and it's a bit much, but it's a really specific format because that evolved from another format of tweet that was like stranger, hello, and then me. Oh, by the way, I've been thinking about the ramifications of what Dorothea is scared of in Fire Emblem or whatever. It was like that was a former tweet like a year ago, and now it's nobody blank and then the other thing. Like we've skipped the first line of that because actually it's all about the second line. Like that's evolved. That feels like it's going to go away in about a month's time. It feels really transient. Whereas one I really, really like is the checks clipboard. That always works for me. And like that specific version of it, I don't know if that's going to stick around, but just that stage directions thing is really good. And if someone had if that had never been done before and somebody said, hey, I'm thinking of tweeting this and I'm going to put this stage direction thing, like, I like that, but I'm not sure people are going to get it. I don't think people read stage directions and picture them in their head. Turns out they do, and it's great. Now there's all kinds of things you can do with that.
But I think, I think that one of the difficulties when you kind of translate that kind of approach to games is that on Twitter and in a text, like you're dealing with a real person, and you kind of, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with AI. We know, like, this is Tom. Like, one, it tickles me that I know that he loves the checks clipboard format, but also, this is the joke he's doing, and this is where he comes from with it, and blah blah blah. With a game, like most game characters are necessarily paper thin, and like, and therefore, when you use like such a sort of formal style, but not backed up by like a full-blooded character, like you sort of go. Like it kind of just falls off you,
Maybe that's why it works in Night in the Woods, because you do feel a massive sense of human weight behind the story.
Actually, there's a very common tweet joke format that I have got to assume pisses you off, Mike. If you see
yes, I know what's
where I'm heading with this, which is I trained machine learning on 50,000 hours of Batman movies and then asked it to make a script, and here it is.
It's never trained. It's I forced a bot.
I forced, yes, sorry.
I mean, and we've picked out like every single word, and Keaton Patty in particular, their entire career is these tweets.
Oh yeah.
And like sometimes I think it works when it is very obvious. Like everyone who reads the tweet understands it's a joke, but other times like people really think they've done.
Oh yeah, no,
like,
I would say that most of the time people think it's real.
Even there was a period where people were doing this and they were lying. They were like literally trying to trick you into thinking they had done this, and they were lying. They'd written the script. It was clear if you know anything about that. If you've read any of these kind of Markov chain generated things, you know what the real ones sound like, and when it's too human, you kind of hang on, you wrote this. And they were phrasing the tweets as if they really had trained a bot. Now the tweet format is intentionally, I think, implausible. Like I saw one that was like 10,000 hours of Batman movies. If you stop thinking about it a second, wait, there aren't 10,000 hours of Batman movies. So the person is not lying. It is a joke. The joke is encoded in there. But every time I see one, I think a bunch of people are going to think this is really how it works.
Yeah,
and if you click on the replies, yeah, and you know maybe it's unfair to tell off someone for making a good intention joke, but boy, if there isn't enough shit to wade through already, in terms of AI misinformation, God alive.
And it's not. I mean, this is something Marsh said was like, if it's only funny in this format if it's something that would be funny anyway, right? If you just because we don't believe it's a robot, so it only works if it's funny, even if you know a human is saying it. Actually, it ties back to what we were saying earlier about there are a bunch of heatsink names that are only funny if an AI generated them. If I generated them, it's not funny. And so if these scripts are relying on you believing the AI generated them to be funny, then that's a lie and it's bad. If they don't need the AI conceit to be funny, then why are you even saying it? Why not just say it?
And like, there's this thing of like, if you have to explain a joke, it's like taking apart a cat to see how it works, and you don't learn anything and the cat dies. And I understand that that's what I'm doing here as well. But like often these jokes actually like, it isn't really like a very good parody of what an AI would do, like in many ways. And it's interesting to like look at what this person thought would be a good parody, because they're actually like, if an AI was capable of doing this, often it's like a massive conceptual invention, like building on the concept of a Friends episode in an unusual way. In reality, like the way AI would mishmash these together would be way more naive and way more abstract. It wouldn't like parse properly most of the time. And if you're actually looking for someone who does do this for real on a regular basis, I recommend looking up Janelle Shane, who really does fun stuff. They actually donated a bunch of stuff to our Proc Jam Kickstarter. It's the Procedural Generation Jam. And it was a list of Dungeons and Dragons spells for the Pymancer class, because
it's just sounding promising.
The spells have been mixed up with like names of pies and recipes for pies, and so all of the spells were like, zone of rhubarb crumble kind of thing, but they were like better than that. And Janelle has a book coming out, I think, about just all of these things. Like
because I can imagine that turning like a concrete surface into the crispy topping of a crumble, but then beneath it is the soft rhubarb, which is like blazing hot. So as you sink into it, it starts to do burning damage.
Yeah, so there are people doing it for real. And they're good. They are good. They're very, very fun. Should
we do some questions?
What, from questions?
If that's where we find them, then that is how we will do it.
Thanks, Tom.
Let us go together.
Look, I was distracted by reading all these questions. Matt writes, hello, watching a stream of the games created in the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam this week, I was struck, as I always am, with the insane quality of some of the games which were made in only 48 hours. However, the one constant theme in any game design postmortem is that game development takes a very long time, and if you assume a game will take a year, there's a good chance it will actually take 3. I have a name for this contradiction, the Game Jam paradox, but I truthfully can't really explain it. What are your thoughts on why so much can be achieved in one weekend, but why development of even seemingly simple games can take many years? Thanks for your insight and the great pod, Matt.
So the first answer to this is that actually, at least when I used to enter game jams, I actually would finish the game like 18 hours in, and the rest was like, polishing it or things like that. So even there, it's still the case that you plan to make the game in a shorter window, right? I don't know, have you ever dabbled in this kind of focused short form creation, even if it's not games?
You've done Jam, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually I did 2 before Gunpoint came out. So I'd already released 2 games when Gunpoint came out, because the first one was just Ludum Dare, and I'm really glad I did it. I think it might have been like 1 year into Gunpoint's development, and it was a great lesson in, hey, if you want to finish something, you need to cut half of what you have planned right now. Cut half of it. And it's the fact, well, A, you have a really hard deadline. B, you're not as invested in this thing. It's not your dream project. It's not the thing that you've invested years of your life into. So there's no sunk cost fallacy. You've only sunk one day into it. And that's why it's good for game jams to not announce the theme until it actually starts, because you can't have prepped it. It can't be too much of an investment. You need it to be kind of breezy and just like, oh, well, if I have to cut half the features on this, I have to cut half the features because I've got to get it done. Getting it done is more important than it being good in this case, which is a really valuable lesson in game development. Like, you know, what's the phrase? That perfect is the enemy of the good or something. Or is it perfect is the enemy of the finished?
Finished is better than perfect.
That's also true. All these things are true. And so it's just a crash course in, hey, if you want to hit a deadline, here's what it actually takes. After day one, look at what you fucking have, realize it's nothing like what you need to have, and scrap half of your plan and then focus on actually finishing the things you do have. And it's, real game development, or what a lot of indies are doing is a multi-year thing with no fixed deadline, myself included, where you can always justify, I need to invest in this feature and all this thing, you know, this feature isn't done yet, so I can't move on. You know, you move on when you finish the thing. And in the game jam, it's like you move on because it's fucking 2 a.m. You need to either sleep or get the next thing done.
There was a period where I was entering game jams quite regularly, and I kind of got quite good at it, I think. Not that I was winning them, but, you know, I had a good process. But that process is that in your mind, you have like a toolbox of mechanics that you can implement quickly and that you know will work. And what you do is you don't design the game that you want. You design the game that you can make out of those pieces. So when you start to make a game over the course of 3 years, you're designing the game that you want, and you're trying to achieve this long-term plan. Whereas a game jam is really about like, what Lego bricks do I have and what shape can I make with them? And it's not going to be the exact shape I wanted when I started out, but it's going to be as close as I can get. And if a shape doesn't fit, you know, you don't put it in the game.
Yeah. It's interesting, like we mentioned earlier on, Baba Is You coming out of the game jam, and I find it fascinating for the fact that, you know, there's so much of Baba Is You in that game jam game. You know, almost, it's, you know, if you have them both on the screen at the same time, you probably wouldn't be able to guess which is which. You know, it's that close. But at that point, he didn't know whether it was going to be a puzzle game or a sandbox game, and so like the fundamental, despite all the building blocks being there more or less, like the fundamental philosophies of the game had not been set. It's like that seems to.
That's the other thing to say is that there are so many successful games that started as a game jam game, and that's not a coincidence. That's, you know, if you start in a super focused way and you're not super invested and you'll roll with what you can do and try and get something done within the time, often you end up with something that shows real potential. People are playing it and liking it and giving you encouragement, and you're super motivated to carry on with it, and you end up making something really, really good.
To get something finished, you do at least have to start.
And it's more so than any other kind of development. You have something to show after 2 days. Like, even if you just treat it as like, I want to make this much bigger project, but let's see if I can do some version of it in 2 days. That's probably the best kickstart you can give to the longer development, is just to have something that you can show to other people after that period and prove that it works. I'd also say this is not a requirement for game jams, but I really believe in making a video of what you made, because when you make something in a short period of time, there's a good chance you'll make something great, but there's a very low chance you'll be able to persuade anyone to play it, because they're like, especially in game jams, like, it's great that spurred you to do it, and it's a good thing to do, but you are competing with like 300 other games. Anyone who is potentially going to play your game is looking at 300 other things at once. Right. The amount of time you can invest in playing, or the number of games you can decide to play from a game jam, is obviously a tiny percentage of what is out there. So make a video, because everyone can watch a video. Like, it's if they follow you on Twitter, or if they're just it pops up in their feed in any capacity, and the video, you know, is of any interest at all, it's easy to watch that. Whereas downloading and playing a game is a huge investment that most people won't take.
And one small footnote also is that some of it is going to be on Matt's part as well. So when we watch these game jam games, our minds are like smoothing over all of the edges that if this was a commercial game that someone was, if you were seeing this on Steam right now, you'd be thinking, what is going on here? But your mind is like smoothing off those rough edges because it's a game jam game, you know. So people's perceptions affect things as well.
Expectations as well. Yeah.
It's kind of like what you said about like when you Angelina entered the game jam, people were sort of more charitable about it because they knew the context of how it was created.
Absolutely.
Phoenix writes, greetings mouse and keyboard. I find that occasionally I will enjoy a game more for its soundtrack than the game itself, with the OST finding its way to my playlists and the game to the bottom of my library. Some of these games include StarCraft Brood War, Risk of Rain, Frozen Synapse, and, brackets, shamefully with no disrespect to Suspicious Elements, Heat Signature. Is this an experience only I have had? Do you feel the same way about some games, and if so, what are they? Much love and pod judiciously, Phoenix.
I'm absolutely 100% behind this. I think Risk of Rain is one of the best soundtracks, I think, for a game ever. But it was so strong, in fact, that I bought the Deadbolt soundtrack. That was the next game from the same devs. I bought it before I'd played Deadbolt, and like several months before. And I listened to it so much that when I played Deadbolt, it was extremely jarring to hear. Like, it was sort of, it was booting up an indie game and just finding, like, I don't know, some latest pop track was just soundtracking this song that you've heard for the last 3 months. So yeah, I'm definitely down with Risk of Rain there. Favorite soundtracks? Anyone else?
Mirror's Edge, but I also love the game. But when I finished the game, I think I kind of stopped with it, and I kept listening to the main theme for Mirror's Edge for years afterwards.
What I don't understand about Civilization is why they just don't do the
oh god, yeah, fucking Baba Yetu.
Just over and over and over again.
So much better than the entire game.
100 hours.
4-hour extended YouTube cuts on loop.
Oh, that exists for sure.
Oh yeah.
I don't need to check.
What about, does nostalgia play a part here? So I still listen to the Final Fantasy soundtracks, but that's partly because they remind me of being a teenager.
Right.
Is that a fact? I mean, is that like Mirror's Edge? Is Mirror's Edge like a nostalgia for playing Mirror's Edge?
Well, weirdly...
throwing his controls against the wall. It was such great percussion.
The track that I really love from it is the one that was used in the first trailer for it. So it is also in the game, but it's... that first trailer was also kind of a special moment. It captures almost everything that I love about the game and is exciting about the game. And it was kind of like, for me, it like encapsulates and is strongly associated with the dream of what that game is. As I've acknowledged many times, it has its flaws and I have my frustrations with it. But it's the ideal of that world and the aesthetic that they came up with for it, and just how kind of gorgeous the whole thing is. That combined with this perfect music for it, that was just like a perfect moment in time, this beautiful dream. And the game itself is sufficiently close to that I loved it, and it's stuck in my memory as one of my all-time favorites, despite many mechanical problems. And so, if anything, like the soundtrack reminds me more of the dream I had of this game than it does of the actuality of playing it.
I feel like that about Skyrim's main theme. I remember how I felt installing like Skyrim and beginning it when I hear that soundtrack, like the promise of exploring those lands.
If I could,
Oblivion for me.
Like a graph of the last 3 Elder Scrolls games of how much I love the soundtrack and how much I love the game is like completely. It's a big X. Like the Morrowind music is absolutely sublime, and with each iteration they've made it more actiony and more up tempo, and I've liked it less and less.
And more tuneful as well, and it means you kind of get really tired of it.
Right.
Yeah, the games have just got better, I think. I love Morrowind, and I absolutely agree with the people who say that Morrowind had a unique strangeness that the other ones don't. It does, and that is a thing that I love about it. But just to play, like I'm a modern conveniences kind of person, and it doesn't have those. And I also just think like, walk in a direction in Morrowind and see what you find, and it's a weird and interesting world, but there isn't that much in it. And then in Oblivion there's a bit more, but it's all kind of a bit formulaic and falls into categories. And then Skyrim has the Fallout 3 thing of there's just so much here, just every little nook and cranny has something in it that's special and interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking about some of the soundtracks that I remember, and not many of them are very good. It's like the one that just suddenly popped into my head was System Shock one, which is sometimes completely unlistenable, like which is noise. It's like noise. So it's got this sort of very bleepy kind of like computery, and it even has like a voice going computer or something.
The horror of Citadel Station. Computers.
I mean,
Remember computers.
And it's really kind of character, like it's very good at scene setting, but like there are some themes in it in some of the areas which are like fucking unlistenable, like proper fucking just like screaming kind of bleeps. Yeah.
Oh God, Transistor. It doesn't really apply because I love the game as well, but oh my God, the soundtrack to that is perfect.
Yeah.
And does kind. Oh, I think again, same as Mirror's Edge, it's the aesthetic that maybe surpasses the game. Both games I like mechanically. Both games have problems mechanically, and in both cases, I love the music, but I think only when paired with the aesthetic, I need the visuals as well. Like it's that place, it's that world that I'm just absolutely in love with. And there's probably, I can't really think of any case where it's just the music I like. I only like music if it pairs with what I'm seeing on screen.
Yeah. And
that can be totally divorced from the mechanics. The mechanics can be bad, but I can't think of a case where the music's wonderful, but the game looks bad.
Because I don't really ever listen to music soundtracks at all either. I don't really listen to film ones either. They always seem a little bit kind of missing the sort of component.
Especially like, the incidental score where it's like one track will be sort of suspense, one track will be sadness, one track will be mega drama. I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to feel here? I'm just working.
Is it like but I think I have a different relationship because I've got to get the requisite mention of my son in, who does listen to music soundtracks. And I think for him, it's mostly because like it's a way for him to play the game when he's not playing the game.
Yeah,
right.
And it's sort of like it's just he's obsessed. Like I was talking about last week with Splunky still, and so he just listens to the Splunky soundtrack, which
That's
don't think I would.
one.
It's a good soundtrack. I've heard so many hours of it now that I really I think I have it on mute for when.
But that's one I haven't listened to much because it's broken up into like 48 tracks, right? And they're all like 16 to 36 seconds long or something,
really?
because it's sort of like remixed dynamically, which is fascinating. Like I have it on my computer, but I don't listen to it much. That's really interesting.
So I don't know what he's listening to then, because he must be listening.
He probably is listening to it.
Yeah.
It does make sense. It's just a little bit different.
Watching like a Minecraft video recently reminded me of the gentle piano music that kick in every now and then.
Yeah.
And so I looked it up and found a playlist of just the Minecraft music. And
I'm pretty sure
that's a really nice, relaxing work soundtrack.
Yeah, the choice of those tracks, I think that it's been really important for Minecraft, sort of the setting and atmosphere and a set of kind of, for such a wide kind of huge player base, and that music, which is actually pretty fucking out there for game music, which is quite sort of and it is introduced like a way of using music in games to like fucking hundreds of millions of people. It's amazing.
Does it like play a certain track at dawn and one at dusk and then some other?
No, it's I think I don't. There must be rules about it, but as far as I know, it's fairly just sort of fades in and out. Like certainly you don't. You know how when games do the morning wake up song, and it's like you fucking know it after about hour 10. In Minecraft, it does. Sometimes you can. It just sort of it started playing the music. I don't know when that started.
Yeah,
but I
you almost
know
forget,
that it's been there, and it's set at this melancholy atmosphere, like I'm on my own in the bottom of the mine thing, and it's like, it's so good.
The use of silence is almost as impressive as the use
and then
of
it goes quiet for like who knows how long. Like
I think the reason I thought it played at dawn is that my lasting memory of it was when I was doing my Minecraft diary for PC Gamer, and my mission was like I went to hell, walked sort of for an hour or something, made another portal, came back. And space in hell is 8 times compressed to real life, so I'm 8 times further away than I was before, and then tried to trek back to where I came from. And there was a time when some kind of fire had started in a forest. Might have been me. Who knows? Who can say who was responsible for this fire? A player was there. Who knows? But I'd emerged from my little tunnel that I created for safety to see like the forest before me just burning as the sun came up and this gentle piano music came. And it was this sublime moment of like, it was serene and beautiful, even though it was kind of like, whoops, gonna burn this part of the world down. This is reminding me, So like you're saying like over associating the music with the cue is kind of a bad thing. Every review I've ever read of The Outer Wilds specifically mentions the track that plays just before the world ends.
Yeah.
Because there's like the solar system ends after 22 minutes, and there's a piece of music that apparently always plays right before that. I've never noticed this.
Oh, really?
I've completed the game. I've done everything there is to do. I've played it for like 20 hours. I've never noticed that there's a particular piece of music. And
for me, it's really important because it starts.
It's telling you something. It's important gameplay information.
It's a couple of minutes before.
After like the first or maybe second time it happens, you're supposed to know this. Like this is telling you something. I had no idea. There must be something about the way my brain forms associations that it can't do it in that order. It can't be like music and then the thing happens. If the thing happened and then some music played afterwards, I would have been like, oh yeah, that's the end of the world music. But like, because it's before, at the time it starts playing, I don't know the world's going to end. I have no idea. Then the world ends a little while later. I'm like, oh, that was surprising. So I'm an idiot, basically. But the Outer Wilds soundtrack is amazing as well. And this is not one where it surpasses the game. It needs the game. It works with the game. And the whole game has this feeling of a thing ending, which is completely appropriate because the solar system you're in is ending all the time. And even when you loop back, there's something beautiful about it where it's just the whole thing. There's this one refrain that just goes through the whole thing. It's in the theme tune. It's every single astronaut who you find is playing a different instrument. They're all playing the same tune. That comes together again later on in the game, and it's also reused and reinterpreted in a lot of different ways. And so the soundtrack by itself is, kind of repetitive because it's like, hey, yeah, we just heard this in a different way. But in game, it's beautiful, and it's so good. It's almost too good because it has such this feeling of a thing ending and everything is already over from the start of the game, that the game itself has an ending. I can't say more than that. But it was too much for me because I'd already had that feeling of ending. It was already so perfect. It was already, I just want to go out on this note. There's just this song, and you just play the song, you're done. You don't need to do anything more than that. And the game itself does a fucking lot more than that. But I won't say anything more about what it does. Christian Peterson says, hello, ornate game show stars. The robot is, in my opinion, the purest Dicey Dungeons class. No other class better captures the risk-reward concept of a game about rolling dice. The first time I got an error, I loudly exclaimed, oh, I get it. I absolutely love the design of this class. I also hate playing it. Should I spend my 6 now, or roll again and go for that jackpot for double damage? Which dice should I spend before making that last roll? It gives me such terrible anxiety to roll that last dice that I often end up just quitting when I gamble and lose. What are some game mechanics that you find to be well designed but you, for whatever reason, hate engaging with? Kind regards, Christian Peterson.
Yeah, it reminded me of something you had been talking about lately, Tom.
Remind me.
About Slay the Spire.
Yes,
and
yes, I do remember that.
And other card-based games where, you get a special card that says you can use this card to pick up 2 cards, but you've got to discard one or
so this.
Like that.
I used this mechanic in Slay the Spire and not thought anything of it, except that I don't like it. It's an advantage, but I don't like it. I didn't know why until I played Nowhere Profit, which lets you. And this, so Nowhere Profit and SteamWorld Quest actually both do this, where you dealt a hand of cards, and once per turn you can just throw one away and get a new one to replace it. And it feels really good. It's just, oh great, I get a do-over. You deal me this thing, but there's some randomness control. And I was playing that and thinking, why doesn't Slay the Spire have something like this? This would be nice for Slay the Spire. It's a game about dealing a hand of cards. Randomness is a big element. You want to minimize it. And I thought, wait, it does. It has that Tools of the Trade, it's called, for the silent class. And we're just checking that this thing is still recording. Tools of the Trade means that at the start of your turn, you draw 1 card and discard 1 card, which is technically better than being able to get a do-over on 1 card, because it's the same thing where you get 1 and you lose 1, but you get the new one before you have to choose which one to lose, which means you can take that into account. You can see, oh, actually, this new one synergizes with this other thing. If you'd asked me before, I would have thrown that one away, but now that I have this, this is one that boosts every defense card I play. This is a defense card. Now I want to keep that defense card and throw away an attack card. So it's better. But in Slay the Spire, I don't like it because once you activate that power, every turn, before you can do anything, you're given this hand of 6 cards, and you're forced to throw one away. Yeah. So it shows you a hand of 6 cards, and I'm like, awesome, I love this. This is great. All these. Yeah, I want all of them. I can't play them all, but I want them all. That's lovely. And it's saying, right now, throw one away. I was like, I don't know, I haven't planned my turn yet. I need to do this. There's a whole mental maths I have to do about what I'm going to do. I can't do it all right now, right up front. And you're also showing me this beautiful hand that I can't have, and I got to throw one away. So the only thing I do is negative. You show me something I can't have, and I have to make a decision. There's no default option. There's no skip this, cancel, or whatever. Whereas if you show me a hand of 5 cards and then say you can replace any one of them, the default action is don't. I just don't. I keep these 5 cards. It's fine. Cool. And so it's never a pressure, and it's never a problem. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. Like, the Nowhere Profit one is less of an advantage. It's just worse. But the Slay the Spire one feels worse because it's pressuring you and it's presented as a negative.
Feels like you're losing out.
Yeah. My solution, I wrote a blog post about this, and my solution was just like, deal me the 5 cards, then show me the extra one and say, pick which one you want to replace with this, or pass. And if you pass, the new one is discarded. So it's still, you still get the discard and everything. And there's a default action, so you're not pressured to do anything. You just say, all right, whatever, I don't care, get on with my turn. Or if you do replace it, it's at least a more positive thing of like, oh yeah, replace this with this. Great, I know what I got. And then if that bonus card happens to be a really powerful one, the power gave you this powerful card. You wouldn't have had it if you weren't using tools of the trade. Right now, there's no concept of which card is the extra one. So even if it did save your ass, you don't know it did because you don't know which one it gave you.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, you could probably say the leftmost one is probably the one I gave you, but the game doesn't highlight that in any way. Or
yeah, the sort of Ascension has the same one called Temple Librarian, like where you use this card in your hand to get 2 cards, and you get to choose a new card. And it's interesting. I think that there must be a kind of player who is able to roll with the feeling bad, who actually is a better player for that, because they just go, oh, Temple Librarian, yes, as opposed to me who goes, fuck off. Stop bothering me. Stop making me feel bad.
Yeah, that's it. It's pressure, and it's like, gotta make a fucking decision. It might be the wrong one. And
for me, I think it's often mechanics where someone would explain to me, we're playing a multiplayer game together. The latest example was auto chess, that genre of game that's emerged. And someone would explain to me, if you want to get really good at the game, you need to master this skill. And so like in auto chess or Dota's variant or League of Legends variant, it's a really big deal that you look at what other players have and you understand like A, what they're going for, and like what characters they're interested in, and B, what that means about the distribution of the characters still in the pool. And at the beginning, you have 8 opponents. So people like the pro players are like checking 8 boards and figuring out. And I'm like, that's really fascinating. And playing probabilities. Yeah, that's great. No way in hell I'm doing that ever. Yeah. Could spend 100 years with this game. Never doing it. But, you have your fun. Sounds really good. And I'll see you afterwards.
By all means, look at what I have.
Yeah, please.
I don't have that kind of time in my life.
Come on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was thinking that it's like not such sort of kind of cardy kind of probability things. There is the design, the kind of risk reward design in action games, especially around parrying and that kind of thing, which obviously there's a skill component to it, which you can kind of feel confident in yourself with or not. But like, I know this is good design. I can see the risk and I can see the reward. I believe these are 2 very important things in games. I'm sure it's all very good, and I'm going to run away from it. I'm going to do bad play to avoid having to do it.
I mean, I've got to say that I feel the game designer has failed you in all these cases, and me, and
yeah, I mean, eventually,
I didn't personally have this problem with the robot, but I feel like that's a flaw in the class, and the Slay the Spire thing, I straight up think is a flaw, and I did a blog post about how to fix it. And the auto battler thing is harder because those games and Dota are designed to have infinite skill ceilings. Exactly. It's supposed to be like the more you can put into this, the more you get out of it, and so that's what they're trying to support there.
They're trying to take every moment of your existence.
But yeah, ideally as a game designer, you don't want people like if somebody says, "Oh, I reckon this is a good game design, but I hate it." That's not a good feeling as a game designer. Like, well, my goal was not to have you impressed by me. My goal was to have you actually like the game.
So basically, what we're saying is that like these are the 4 more things that we feel we should like about games, but like they're actually shit.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like weapon durability in Zelda would be a thing where it occupies that same unhappy space where I see why it's there, but it endlessly pisses me off. And actually, a lot of people feel this way to the point that I think it's probably just a mistake. Like, I know some people do like it, and I know their reasons for liking it, and I see their point. It's true, these are upsides, but I think the downsides are just too big for too many people. We have one last question that's sort of more of a story. There is a question at the end of it, but we don't really have answers to it. But I like this story. This comes from Ryan, who writes, "Dear Crate and Crowbar, recently I decided to give Skyrim another shot on PC, trying to mod it into a game I actually wanted to play again. Survival-focused mods like Frostfall, tougher and more varied enemies, etc. I took a page from Tom F's approach, ignoring the parts of the game I didn't want to engage with, not using the map, turning off the compass, and disabling fast travel. The end result of all these tweaks is an obtuse and unpleasant experience." End letter. "I am constantly lost in the snow or having to go far out of my way to avoid freezing water, and there are overpowered enemies all over the place. Yet this produced a far more compelling story than any quest in the game. I found myself hiding in an otherwise useless cave to stay warm and to avoid a stalking saber cat. I ran straight into a bandit camp, not because I wanted to kill them, but because it was my only chance to escape the 2 packs of wolves on my tail. I combed through the ruined fort looking for food to stave off hunger, not loot to sell. Between the blizzard and the wolves, it took all of my resources just to reach the town of Dawnstar alive. The vanilla game had never evoked a sense of safety that I felt when I arrived at the inn. The fire pit had never looked so warm before. The world never felt like a real place that I could just steamroll... when I could just steamroll every enemy and wander around at my leisure. At the same time, getting over it with Bennett Foddy has me thinking about how adversity and frustration, not just challenge, can produce a sense of heft and substance. Foddy's mountain is just a nonsensical pile of reused assets, yet the Herculean task of ever reaching the top makes it real. So finally, my question, what games have you experienced that are richer for the ways in which they inflict pain, inconvenience, or confusion on their players? Dark Souls comes to mind, of course. More importantly, what games suffer from offering too much player convenience or too comfortable of an experience? Cheers, Ryan." Actually, now that I think about it, Monument Valley ended up just kind of passing me by because it was so slick. It was a puzzle game where everything is so intuitive. It's the thing a lot of puzzle designers are aiming for, but maybe when you get it is a bit of a poison chalice because at every stage I just did what I was prompted to do, and I wasn't being told what to do. It was subtle. I didn't feel like it was a Simon Says thing. It was just in every situation. It was so intuitive, so obvious what I should do that it never felt like I was solving a puzzle. And it was beautiful, and it was a lovely aesthetic experience. But at the end of it, I thought, wow, that just was over. I just did everything immediately.
Yeah.
And not everyone's had that experience. Like it's not necessarily known as, a completely trivial game. For some people, it's not necessarily intuitive. But when you try to make a puzzle intuitive, you kind of want the player to think in the right direction and not be misguided. And they almost did it too well for me.
Yeah, I felt that as well. I just it felt inconsequential. It's just a lot of pretty images.
Whereas, Journey is also really slick, and I never felt confused or frustrated, but I did feel like I was solving things. I felt like I was... I wouldn't describe that as a game that had adversity in it or pain or anything, but it felt satisfying.
Well, I think you've got control, you've got a mastery of control and a sense of movement and kind of being there that you don't get in Monument Valley.
Yeah.
Literally just like a little... walking along a straight line.
Yeah, there's a pleasure in just going from A to B in Journey, and so if a puzzle involves going crisscrossing between multiple things, you're sort of having a good time, even if you're not puzzled about what to do.
And it'll change the rules about how you move around now and then, and while throwing fucking amazing shit. Right?
Yeah,
I think the only problem with this kind of discussion that's been had so many times is that our notion of what difficulty is extremely one-dimensional. And actually, you had a great video that you made about this recently, Tom, where you just concluded that difficulty is just arbitrary. It's arbitrary and highly variable. And I actually played Hollow Knight for the first time this year, which is heavily inspired by Dark Souls, I think, and other games like Metroidvanias. And I ended up not finishing it because the difficult parts that I enjoyed were entering a new part of the world and not understanding what it was. It felt really like exploring an alien landscape. Mm-hmm. And the final boss is just difficult. Like I looked at it and I was like, this is really hard, but there's nothing behind it. I'm not going to see anything new. The texture of the difficulty that I was facing was not interesting anymore. And it's interesting that, actually in those examples that were given, like finding safe spaces, being chased by wolves, these are all like different kinds of difficulty. They're different challenges, different emotions that were being experienced. And I think often we think too straightforwardly about what it means to challenge a player. I don't think I'll ever finish Hollow Knight. I don't think I need to. I think I got what I need out of it.
I think that continual games, kind of why smash your head up against a thing that will actually, there's nothing after.
Right.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII, never finished it. Got to the end.
That's all the questions we have time for this week. Before I forget, we should thank our Patreon backers who make this podcast possible. You can back us on Patreon, patreon.com/CrateandCrowbar. We also have a YouTube account where we put up videos of this podcast, but it's just like a static image, and then you just hear the podcast as you watch the static image.
Perhaps that you're listening to it on there right now.
Yeah, then you don't need this. But those cool people who are doing that know that it's at youtube.com/CrateandCrowbar. We're at Crate and Crowbar on everything, including Twitter. That's our name there, Crate and Crowbar.
Instagram.
You can send us questions at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. Wait, is that the address?
Yeah, I think
because I just logged into Gmail to check it.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay, great.
Do you know what?
I guess it redirects.
I've heard Chris say this so many times. Well, have I? Has he ever said that?
He's undervalued.
Have we gone off?
There's a degree of boilerplate. If you haven't done it in 6 months, then doesn't roll off the tongue. It's questions@crateandcrowbar.com, surely.
Oh, he does say that, doesn't he?
That's all the boilerplate stuff. Oh wait, no, we're people on Twitter individually.
We're people. We are people.
Don't forget that.
Alex, where are you on Twitter?
I'm on rotational at Twitter.
That's not true.
It's the literal opposite.
Mike.
I'm at MTRC.
At
Mike is nice and easy to say and to remember.
At twitter.com.
That's not how that works. That's an email address. Don't email that. Fucking Twitter will get it. Who knows what they'll do with it.
And Tom is Pentadact at Twitter.
No.
It's anarchy without Chris. He's not here to lay down the law.
Well, I think we should wish everybody a very sincere.
Is that really something you can wish?
Oh boy.
We wish you a thanks.